I know what we have to do. And then you, Banky, you, Alyssa, and I, all of us, can finally be all right.
Please don't say it.
We've all got to have sex together.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. We explore its themes, the history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Roque. I'm a voiceover artist. I guess writer, producer, host now over at Collider, and numerous other things around town. And if you've been following me lately, I just voiced over some Square Enix stuff for Final Fantasy, which is starting to happen. So
It's very cool.
that's nice. But yes, other than that, lover of movies. That's what I would say.
And we have a movie, maybe this feels like almost our most controversial movie to be doing at this moment in time.
How ironic that this movie is the most controversial movie.
Just saying.
Because it was controversial even when it came out initially.
And now in a totally different way, I
In a
think.
completely different way for so many reasons. But we knew we couldn't tackle this movie without the perfect guest.
I think
so
we found it.
And we found it, right. Those of you who remember Sasha Pearl Raver from our Pulp Fiction podcast, she was our guest there. And those of you who know Sasha Pearl Raver as the host of FX Movie Download, she's been on numerous things all across our industry. And it's our joy. And she's 8.5 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And she's taking the time with her unopened gifts sitting there staring at her in the face. And we are in her house, and she's very graciously let us come into her house to record this podcast with her. So, Sasha Pearl Raver, welcome back to the Cine-Files.
Thank you so much. And had we recorded Pulp Fiction this week, just imagine.
I can't.
Just
I can't possibly
imagine
Very
what would
true.
have happened.
Yeah, I'm not prepared for that.
Nobody's prepared for that. I'm very conflicted.
I'm sure you are. Well, what we should say is that we actually intended on recording this episode several months ago, and it was literally the week that the Harvey Weinstein thing happened, and all of the beginning of what has become a tremendous movement worldwide, the Me Too movement. And at the time, I think we all said, let's wait, because the movie is Chasing Amy, and Chasing Amy, more than almost any other movie I can think of, goes right at sexuality and men and women and what all this means and what is acceptable and what is not. And I feel like I should say something which I've never said ever before on the Cine-Files, which is I want to offer a warning to those people listening to this, is that this movie discusses sex in a very frank way and has people saying things which may or may not be offensive, and we're going to get into all that stuff. And so if you usually listen to the Cine-Files with your small children, then maybe this is one that you're going to have a lot of conversations with your kids
There's a
about.
Black Beauty joke coming your way that you better be prepared for.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Yes, maybe go out in the car and listen to this away from your family. Yes.
Sasha, do you remember how you first came to this film?
I came to this film in a very special way, a way that was really near and dear to my heart, which is I was at USC studying film, and there was a class called Cinema 466, and a filmmaker involved in a movie that had not been released or was being released like the next day because it was a Thursday night class would come in, screen their movie, and talk about it. So we had like Sam Mendes come in to talk about American Beauty and stuff like that. And Kevin Smith, who I was a huge fan of because of Clerks and Mallrats, came in with Chasing Amy. I nerded out so hard, and I will always remember I've never really asked for autographs, but at the time I was like, I have to get an autograph. And he signed my cinema notebook to Sasha, get the fuck out of LA. You're too good for it here. And I was like,
That's
oh
awesome.
man, that's so cool.
I assume you still have it.
Oh, of course I still have it. I was actually trying to find it, but things are a little chaotic right now. Right. But yeah, I just remember watching the movie, and I didn't have a real Ben Affleck sense.
No,
All he was like the guy from Dazed and Confused at that point.
Right. And Mallrats.
And Mallrats.
Right.
But he's he's such a jerk that you don't really follow him that much. And I just remember watching the movie and being so blown away by the frank vulgarity, the hilarious, charming vulgarity of it, but also how it dealt with relationships in a way that I had never seen before.
So you saw it in Norris, I assume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's so funny because I was at USC. I predate you by probably like 3 years or something because I was getting my MFA there, and I had that same 466 class.
I love that class. That class was
was
best.
really cool. Really, really cool.
Oh, man.
Yeah. but I did not see Kevin Smith there. Do you remember how you first came to the film?
Yeah, it wasn't at Cinema 466, that's for sure. We saw it at Florida State. It was like the first year I had come back to college. You know, I was just finishing up my 8 years in the military, and I'd got accepted at Florida State, and I was figuring out if I was going to pursue a career as an actor or filmmaker, whatever, but I knew I was loving film. And so I remember this was a big deal because the independent films were the things that were the huge deal in the 90s, mid-90s and on. They were exploring these topics that didn't get talked about, Unbearable Lightness of Being, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, like all these, Henry and June, even like these films that really approached the lines of sexuality and were forcing us as a society to talk about this. And then here comes Kevin Smith in such a different way, such a kind of duty, bro-y kind of way with Clerks, but there was a frankness and an interesting simplicity that but you could see him like figuring it out in his movies. And I love that because I was too. I think a lot of us at the time who were aware of this were like, oh, we didn't know. And so I couldn't wait to see this movie. And I loved Mallrats. I was one of the few people that defended Mallrats and I loved Clerks. But Chasing Amy, just from the trailer, it felt like to me this was a more mature film, like he was coming into his own as a filmmaker, and this felt like something else. And just like Sasha said, I didn't know what to expect of Affleck because we'd seen him be such a villain in a majority of the stuff that he did. And Joey Lauren Adams, I'd had a crush from the small part she had in Mallrats. I was like, she's so cute and
also
Right.
Also a small part in Dazed and Confused.
Oh, in Dazed and Confused, right, exactly.
I haven't seen that in forever. I have no memory of it at all.
Like letters, yeah. But yeah, so I went with a group of my friends. It was like 4 or 5 of us, and I remember sitting in Tallahassee in the theater watching it, and I just was blown away by the emotion of the film and what they tackled and the frankness of a lesbian sub. Like, what's that all about? Like, you weren't seeing that in films at that time, and so it was so amazing to experience it. I went back 2 or 3 more times before. Like, I went to the Dollar Theater to see it, that they have at universities sometimes because I just had to watch it over and over again.
That's where I saw it.
No.
I saw it. So I had heard about Clerks, but didn't see it. And then, I've seen it since.
Okay.
But I didn't see it when it,
Sure.
when it first come out. I didn't see it on video. And then, but I'd heard, his next movie, it's coming out as Mallrats. So I saw Mallrats before I saw Clerks.
Oh.
I had rented that and I went, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Even
It's
though
a weird intro.
it's so much out of when the funny things about Kevin Smith, I have a weird relationship with him. He's like a year younger than me, and he's a heavy guy with a beard who's into comic books and a geek thing. And so, and there was so much about him that reminds me of me and my friends, except mine was like the Bay Area version instead of the New Jersey version. And so when I saw Mallrats, I was like, they're talking about all my stuff. But I didn't like the movie that much. And so Chasing Amy came out and I didn't see it right away. And then I started hearing it's really good. And we went to see it at the like cheap movie theater on Colorado and Pasadena.
Oh, yeah.
And just were blown away. Had that same experience of the word you used, I think, is the key word for this movie, which is frank.
Yes.
I can't think, it is so frank in the way that it deals with all the stuff it's going to jump into, and then has this core of some really real emotion that totally worked on me when I saw it.
It's an incredible mix of frank and respectful. That's what's insane about the film.
Well, this is the thing is that once you go, we spend a lot of time being very delicate around each other, and being delicate in a weird way is also disrespectful, depending on how you do it. You know what I mean? It's like if you're never really truly engaging with someone, well, you're actually disrespecting them on some level. Now going directly out of things can also be disrespectful. And this is the line I think we're going to walk, or I feel like I'm going to walk as we talk about this film, is like, because you laugh at something mean that you are saying that you agree with that.
Right.
And this goes back to like, Archie Bunker. I think like Archie Bunker and Banky are very similar in the sense of these are characters who are going to say things that are horrible, and yet we laugh at it and we like them on some fundamental level and care about them, And I think that's sort of what is happening a little bit in this film.
That's an amazing and very insightful comparison. I'd never even thought about that, but it's so true.
Well, and this is the thing, like we're currently in an age, and this is something that I've been thinking about since we started talking about this movie, where we're in the world of we have to really speak correctly and never be disrespectful. And in the 70s, the All in the Family era was we're going to go right at this stuff and be offensive, and that's the only way to deal with it. And I'm a person who firmly believes in being completely respectful and sensitive to people at all times. And yet, I miss Archie Bunker. Yeah. And that's this complicated thing of like how we're going to deal with this. We should talk a little bit about Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Is that his story? You said it so well. Is that it was this moment of this birth of independent film, and then you have this guy from New Jersey who makes this little movie on credit cards, in a convenience store, and this becomes a focal point for independent film in a very odd way.
Mm-hmm. And he's sort of anti-mumblecore. Like, that's one of the things that I find so interesting about him is nobody writes riffs and casts actors capable of delivering and improvising riffs better than he does.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, there is just poetry in a lot of what he does. Yeah. And some of it, you can see like the Quentin Tarantino influence in a lot of it, but you can also see that it was very much his own thing. And if you ever see him speak or listen to his podcast, you can hear like the way he writes is the way his brain works, is the way he talks. And then he finds actors who can be his voice.
Right. Well, and you can hear that these are the conversations with him and his friends and how the jokes they would all kind of make. And he made that poetry, as you said. And it's funny too. Like Kevin Smith is not my favorite filmmaker. He doesn't go on my list of top directors.
I don't think he wants to be. I don't think he wants to.
Well, and also, like the vicissitudes of his career are real high and real low. When he delivers a stinker, it's a stinker. And when he delivers something great, it's really great.
Yeah. But where I think he is great, I think he's an amazing storyteller. Like my favorite Kevin Smith things are actually the Superman story, the Prince story, like his speaking tours. He is an incredible spoken word artist of some weird kind.
Which is why when you get monologues in his films, they're so good.
So good.
Yeah.
There's one story I heard about Clerks that I want to say because it's just so... he talks about how Clerks gets discovered. And without this story, there is no Kevin Smith, which is they go to like the New York film market and because they hear that's where you sell a film. They have no money. And they put the movie in a movie theater. It's going to show twice, I think. And it's him and Scott Mosier, who's the producer, who shows up in this film. And they just put up like, things on telephone poles and walls saying, come see this movie Clerks. And the first screening, literally nobody shows up. They're all alone in a theater, which I've been that person. It's brutal. And there's a guy whose name I don't remember, and he is heading off to Europe, and he's in New York, and he's heading to his flight, and he calls into the airline, and they say, "Oh, your flight's delayed 4 hours." So he goes, "Oh, what am I going to do 4 hours?" And he walks by the telephone pole, and there's this sign. And so he goes, I guess I'll go see this movie. He goes into a movie theater. Maybe there's 3 other people there. He thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever seen. Oh my God. And his best friend writes for the Village Voice, and his other really close friend works for Harvey Weinstein at Miramax. Wow. Whoa. And he makes 2 phone calls.
Whoa.
And that is why Kevin Smith exists today.
Whoa.
Now, I might not be telling exactly because I heard this story a long time ago, but it's on the Clerks commentary track. And it's just like, this just shows how much luck plays. Yeah. And this thing is one person happened to have their flight canceled, and that is why this is happening right now.
Damn, that's kismet.
It really is. Yeah. It really is. And as we said, Clerks goes to Sundance, and it's this huge surprise hit. Makes the deal with Miramax. The movie is a big hit. They give him Mallrats. It doesn't do so well. And now we come back with Chasing Amy, which is a fairly small, fairly independent film.
But I also think we don't get Chasing Amy if Mallrats doesn't kind of flounder.
That's
because it forces him to go deeper. It forces him to tackle a subject that pushes the boundaries of what he can do, because he fell back on Mallrats, kind of like Snatch with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Like, I know this. I can play these notes. And then he realized, like, okay, I've got to do something bigger, I got to have something to say, which is what the whole premise is of the movie, right? This idea of finding something personal to say. And I feel like that's what I meant earlier. He's working things out within himself through his films, and you can see it happening. And I love that about his movies, because he doesn't present himself as like, I'm Antonioni, or I'm this, I'm Fellini. He's like, no, I've got an idea. I'm figuring out, I cast these people. I wrote this script. I'm trying to work something out. And I love that. I really do.
Yeah, totally. And what's interesting is you have a sense of, this is a conversation within his own head. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, just as you say, he's working it out. Yeah. And the movie, this is an indie film. I mean, is the budget bigger than Clerks? Oh, yeah. But this is still, it's shot on Super 16. It's got a budget of $200,000 to $300,000. I mean, this is an indie film.
Yeah. Can you imagine Ben Affleck being in a film for $250,000 now?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's fast. We see a couple of big stars show up in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Should we get into it?
Yeah.
We open up at comics and Comic-Con.
This was, well, first of all, you brought up Harvey Weinstein, and we've already talked about the Me Too thing. When the Miramax logo came up, I cringed. I was like, oh, like I had like an actual like visceral, like, oh man. And then the movie started and we're at New York Comic Con and it's on like the 4th floor of some tiny building.
Yeah.
You know, there's like 40 people in the hall. And I'm just like, oh, wow, things have changed so much.
Yep.
I mean, how many people went to Comic Con in New York this year? Like 175,000?
Yeah, it was the highest attended Comic Con all year.
It's like if every one of those people brought $1.50, they funded Chasing Amy.
Yeah, true. It's hilarious.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember I went to New York Comic Con in 1991. Oof. And it was what it was like. I mean, there was a room and there were a bunch of tables and there were people there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a decent sized room because back then comics were still a complete fringe thing that people liked.
It's like the Doctor Who con now is only one bottom floor of a hotel. It's like 2 or 3 ballrooms and then there's a couple of smaller rooms and that's it.
Right.
It's nowhere near what these Comic Cons are. It's insane.
And we get some shots we've seen some artwork from the comic, which is done by Mike Allred, who's a very well-known comic book artist. And we go into meet Ben Affleck and Jason Lee. Ben's wearing his own clothes. That's the budget of the movie. Yes. And there's some good clothes he's got on in the late 90s.
That 90s fashion, man.
Yeah, those baggy pants, baggy jeans and loafers.
Loafers with white socks.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we have the Uber fan because they are doing the comic Blunt Man and Chronic that everybody thinks is the coolest thing in the world, whatever that is. And who comes up to Jason Lee but Scott Mosier, the producer of the film, and starts talking to him. And,
Well, first we get Ethan Suplee.
Yeah. He's
that's
a super
right.
fan.
We get Ethan Suplee, and then we get Scott Mosier, who comes up with Casey Affleck.
with a very young, whose
very young Casey.
credit I love is Little Kid. It's funny now. There's Casey Affleck stuff that's going on now too. You know.
Well, I was pissed when he was nominated for the Oscar and then ended up winning. And I always said that in the same year where we had the whole drama with, I keep wanting to say 12 Years a Slave, with Birth of a Nation.
Yeah, right.
And everything that happened there, I was like, why are we okay then with the Casey Affleck stuff?
yeah.
That bothered me a ton last year. And as soon as he said he wasn't showing up to the Oscars this year, I was like, of course you're not.
Yeah.
Because you're a coward and you shouldn't anyway, but you shouldn't have won in the first place because let's be honest, I didn't think that performance was that great. I'm not a Manchester by the Sea truther. I don't love it.
I didn't see it.
There it is.
There's so many movies.
It's 3 hours, dude. It's a slog.
And there's one like deeply emotional scene, and the rest of it is him just looking sort of blank and like a little drunk. And
Well, that sounds like my thing.
Yeah, probably.
Like a little drunk.
oh, you're stoked then.
That's how I walk through life.
Then you're going to be thrilled by it.
And what Affleck and Scott Mosier are talking to Jason Lee about is the fact that he is a tracer.
You're a tracer. I'm not a tracer. I'm an anchor.
What's so funny about this is this was so the world of my friends.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had so many friends who drew comic books, and our good friend who had been on the podcast, Dan Panocean, at the time, now he's got his book slots and he's a great artist, all-around artist. But at the time, he made his fame as an inker. Mm-hmm. And so this thing of you're just a tracer is like, oh, those are fighting words. Because truly, if you ever see the work that an inker does on pencils, it is a remarkable art form.
But it's incredible. Like, what's this from? 1997, right? So 21 years ago. And we're still getting those comments on YouTube in different versions, different forms, right?
Yeah.
You're just saying what they said already on the other network. You're just repeating the same thing. Nothing new, nothing original. You hear all these and the super fan that comes up and goes, I knew it. Like, I knew what you were doing. I knew what your theory was. I knew, like, and you deal with that all the time. And walking into this world, and you've been in this world longer than I have, Sasha, watching this movie now, it's on like multiple levels. It's a very strange experience.
It's so weird. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And we go off to have our first panel.
The panel killed me. That killed me. Can you imagine where would you ever find a room that small?
Right.
Where would you ever like at a con now?
Even the way far in the back room is way bigger than
Yeah.
this. Well, because everyone who can't get in Hall H is off trying to find something they
Right.
can
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is the great tragedy of Chasing Amy. So I moved to Los Angeles, I'm starting school, and I see this movie and I love this movie. And this is even part of the sad part. I'm going to need you to tell me the name of the actor who plays the black comic book author.
Dwight Huell.
Dwight Huell. Now, why do I not know that name? because I will never forget going to see this movie and being like, this guy's amazing. He's going to work forever. He's so good. And if you have ever lived in Los Angeles and been to the ArcLight,
Yes.
you've seen Dwight.
He
works there at the Hollywood ArcLight. And I remember going in when it first
realized
opened.
that I have seen it.
Yes.
And my heart broke into 5 million pieces. And I was like, this is LA.
Mm-hmm.
This is LA because he is so good. Dwight Huell. I should know his name and I don't.
Visited him at the ArcLight Hollywood, I guess.
I have had 2 occasions where I have been this close to saying something, but there's something stops me because I don't want to have that
you don't know what-
experience, and I don't know what his reaction.
You don't know where he is.
And the worst part is, at the ArcLight, you have name tags that say your name and your favorite movie, and there are people who say Chasing Amy, and I'm like, God, that must be uncomfortable.
His doesn't say Chasing Amy.
No, but it would be awesome if it did.
Because he's great in this scene. He is great. And he starts off with what's so funny when you first see the movie is that he is playing the caricature of the black nationalist, black power guy. And his first thing is about Star Wars as a metaphor for keeping the black man down.
Those movies are about how the white man keeps the brother man down, even in a galaxy far, far away. Check this shit. You got cracker farm boy Luke Skywalker, Nazi poster boy, blonde hair, blue eyes. And then you got Darth Vader, the blackest brother in the galaxy, Nubian god.
What's a Nubian?
Shut the fuck up.
This is great logic.
And I have to say, my question as I was watching it, I was like, there's no way that Kevin Smith, well, there is. There's a way that maybe Kevin Smith came up with this. But I'm like, that to me feels like one of those conversations that he had with a buddy and he always remembered it. And he was like, I'm using this in a movie.
Yeah.
I am definitely using this later on. Like, I wonder, he now works with Mark Bernardin quite a bit. They do Fat Man and Batman on Fat Man or Fat Man on Batman. Fat Man on Batman.
Yeah, Fat Man on Batman.
And I was like, I wonder if Mark was the person who told him that the first time. Because that seems like a very Mark Bernardin thing to say.
Wow.
Well, and it's probably something, whether he said the first thing or someone else, they had this great conversation.
Yeah.
And then it got built up in his brain over the years until he finally gave it this speech to this character.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what all writers do, really, is just steal from themselves.
And jumping ahead, although we'll need to jump back, there's also a Riverdale conversation. And I read Archie comics religiously when I was younger. And I love the show Riverdale. And watching that, I was like, oh, man. Is he fucking Mr. Weatherby? Is that a thing? Wow.
And I love the reveal that the finding out that Darth Vader is a white man is telling you that deep inside, well,
We
let
all
him
wants
say
to
it.
be white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So brilliant.
And Jedi's the most insulting installment because Vader's beautiful black visage is sullied when he pulls off his mask to reveal a feeble, crusty old white man. They trying to tell us that deep inside, we all wants to be white.
And then what happens is something that really, it does happen at a Comic-Con, but maybe doesn't go this far. Jason Lee and Ben Affleck start arguing with Hooper X.
We all wants to be white.
Well, isn't that true?
And then what really I've never seen at a Comic-Con is, in the end, Hooper X draws a gun and shoots Jason Lee. And everyone scatters.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Now, at this point in the movie, we're like, okay, we're not really being realistic here. Like the level of silliness we just went to, which I actually think is too far, because the rest of the movie doesn't have this level of silliness. You know, because if a guy drew a gun and shot someone in the middle of 50 people or 30 people at this small panel, there would probably be some consequences.
There would, especially in the Twitter age.
Well-
I kept thinking about what would happen on Twitter nowadays.
Well, they address it though because they pick him up and he says, "Oh, I thought, how come no one's caving in your head?" He goes, "Wrong coast." And that
No, he says his publicist gets clearances.
No, he does say that.
Yeah.
But Ben Affleck goes, "How do you keep getting away with this?
Yeah.
Why? How do they not like? How isn't the cops coming in and like bashing your head in?" And he goes, "Wrong coast." And I was like, "That's a shot. That's a great shot at what was happening in L.A. with Rodney King and all. Like it was that kind of shot.
Sure.
It was quick.
You're right. You're
It
right.
was
You're
there.
totally right. Well, and it's also like Ben Affleck or Banksy and Holden are doing this to help stir up controversy to help sell his comic book. Right. Now, 2 white guys would never do this today. Not in the Twitter age and of the like, you can't afford to be shown saying something that is like this, you know? But at this point, it's like, this is great. This is the fun game we're playing because, of course, it's all fake. They're actually friends. And we find out that Hooper X has an entirely different character that is revealed.
And that character reveal is so well done. Acting-wise, Dwight's crushing it.
What's a Nubian? Bitch, you almost made me laugh.
Man, what about you? You didn't tell me you were gonna scream black rage. I nearly pissed myself.
Although it does make me wonder, if this movie was made now, how would the LGBTQA...
This is the thing.
Listen, the whole movie.
I know.
You can have a conversation about that with the whole movie because of how they treat that whole thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I don't think Kevin Smith was thinking, how am I going to represent each of these groups when he was writing this stuff? He was thinking, what do I think about all this? And he was writing it from his perspective.
And he was like, and what's funny?
And what's funny, you know? And so, yeah, because Hooper X is actually a gay man who is, I would say, fairly stereotypical in the way that he is portrayed.
Yes.
You know?
Powerfully, though.
He's a great character.
Yeah, powerfully, though. And that's what I like about him. Because he knows who he is. Of all the people in the film, he knows who he is. There's no crisis of conscience. He never changes who he is. And that's what I love about him and his presentation and his performance in the movie. Everyone else goes through things.
Go through a lot. No, not only is he solid knowing who he actually is, but he's solid knowing the role that he is playing.
Yes.
Which is not him, but he is doing to sell his book in the way that he is doing it and why.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very clear. You're right. He is the most solid guy in the whole movie. We find to have a conversation with Joy Lauren Adams, who is Alyssa, and she is also a comic book artist doing her kind of indie book. And Holden says, "Yeah, I've read your book. It's cute, chick stuff, but cute." A little condescending. Oh no, I'm sorry.
It's Banksy.
It's that's who says it. And she says, "Oh yeah, you Trace." Great little button on the scene, and we go off to a bar. And this is where we have your conversation about Archie.
Riverdale, Archie, Mr. Weatherby. Oh, man.
Apparently, Archie and Jughead are lovers.
Yeah.
This nun was teaching us about the Blessed Trinity. You know, she's going on and on about the three persons in one God thing, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Banky just goes ballistic on her. They got this huge fight.
An 8-year-old kid. How bad could it have been?
Well, have you ever seen a nun call a small child a fucking cunt rag? It wasn't pretty. But shit like that's bound to happen when you make a kid wear a matching tie and slacks every day.
All right.
And then we get into the dart scene where they have a whole conversation about like what's love, what's lust, what's fleeting, what you actually really want out of a relationship. And it's so quintessentially Kevin Smith in like the rapid fire banter, the intelligence of it, but also, again, it's super crass.
Yeah, super crass.
But in a really great way.
Because what inspires it is two people making out on the hood of Banksy's car.
Yeah.
And so it's not coming from a place of like legitimate, like, oh, I just read this great poem. What do you think about it? It's like these two people are making out. What does this mean? What do you think it is? What is love? Blah, blah. So it just sparks it.
And by the way, that's Scott Mosier, the producer, and his girlfriend who are making out on the car.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
He got 2 cameos?
He did.
I never knew that.
And we could tell right away that Holden is into Alyssa.
Oh, yeah.
That is
the second
very,
he
very
accepts
clear.
going to the bar because Banksy doesn't want to go, or Banky doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
And Holden says, yeah. And so they go.
I keep wanting to say Banksy. Is it Banksy or Banky? Now I can't remember.
Banky.
It's Banky. Yeah.
It's
okay.
Banky.
Banksy's an artist.
Banky,
Yeah,
artist.
Banky. Okay.
Spanky. Like Spanky.
Jason Lee, please forgive us for misrepresenting your character. And not only do we know that he likes Alyssa, but Hooper knows too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We're back at the comic book studio, and they get an invite from Hooper to go to a club thing, and Alyssa will be there, but maybe Banky shouldn't go.
But here's in that scene, like they're just having whatever conversation about like the light pole. Ben Affleck at the end of that scene, which I am sure is improvised, comes over, makes a joke about it not being a gay club, and starts dancing behind him. And then there's pre-lap into the music that plays at the club. And just the way Ben Affleck dances and messes with him, that I think was the moment where I fell in love with Ben Affleck. I was like, oh man, what's up? This guy has got stuff.
Well, we should say this is a star-turning performance for him.
Totally.
I mean, and it's so funny where Ben Affleck's career goes because it has a whole lot of ups and downs along the way.
Oh yeah, but he got new teeth from Michael Bay because of this movie.
Yep,
Armageddon came next.
Yeah.
Armageddon.
We have talked about.
Yes, we have.
Woo! I love that movie.
The movie is great. Sasha, thank
Love
you very
that
much
movie.
for saying
Love
that
that
on
movie. That movie's
record. That's right.
fantastic.
That's right. People need to recognize.
That movie co-written by J.J. Abrams.
Hello.
Never forget.
Hello.
The Cine-Files has already given all the time it needs to give to that film. Go back and listen to it. It is actually one of my favorite episodes.
It is a good episode.
But we're going to head off to the club.
All right.
Alyssa's there. She's dancing. Hooper's talking to Ben. We find out that both Alyssa and Holden are from New Jersey, from very close to each other.
So you know the Tri-Town area?
Quiz me.
Miller Hill,
Wrote my name on the wall.
Sandy Hook.
Lost my virginity there.
This is so cool. The mall.
Eden Prairie or Menlo Park.
Oh no, here's the big test. Quick stop.
My best friend fucked a dead guy in the bathroom.
You know that girl?
I did before she was committed.
There are so many little things like that in this movie that I love so much. Yeah, and there's also a shout out to Ben Affleck's character in Mallrats.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
It's a whole universe. Clerks, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy are a universe.
Right.
That's the
It's
Smith
the View Askew universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're right. Joey Lauren Adams is so cute.
Yep.
And it's funny too because I've looked around a little bit, and there are people that just can't get past her voice.
Well, same thing with Fran Drescher. Same thing with some people have that voice that people just can't get past for whatever
And
reason.
she does have an unusual voice, and I love her. I think she's great.
I think she's like a wonderful re-embodiment of like the sort of Goldie Hawn-ish,
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
quite manic pixie, but a little bit. And I just think she's wonderful. And she herself as an actor is incredibly grounded, despite the fact that she's got this like little baby voice.
Yeah,
Right.
But
totally.
there are people who, I mean, I love Lake Bell's In a World, and she talks a lot about Sexy Baby and that voice that women put on. With Joey Lauren Adams, it doesn't feel put on. It doesn't
at all.
feel like some
Yeah.
weird affectation. It feels like that's just bizarrely how
Yeah.
her vocal cords fused, and this is how she sounds. And it's never bothered me. I felt like it was
Doesn't
sort of
bother me at all.
trademark.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an unusual voice, but it
Yeah.
doesn't bother me at all. She gets brought up on stage so we can hear more of her unusual voice because she is going to sing a song.
This is for that someone special out there. Ready? I'm feeling nothing but all alone. Just missing someone I don't even know.
And it is, she wrote that song. And she's singing it right for Ben.
And watching that moment, it is so one of those like this is an independent movie moments because in any other movie, you're not getting a 2.5 minute stage performance of an unknown song.
Right.
Like that's not happening.
Right.
And it's just a tight shot. And you can tell because she and Kevin Smith were in a relationship at the time.
Yes.
And you can see how much Kevin Smith was in love with her in that scene. Just lingering on her face, like he is Ben Affleck in that moment. And Ben Affleck, as she's singing, when he like rubs his hand down his chest, and he's so into the vibe.
He's wonderfully dorky in this movie.
Really, yeah.
He really is.
He walks that line between dork and douche so much in the whole movie. Like it really is incredible. You like him all the way.
Actually,
through,
going to be the
but he
title
comes
of his
close.
autobiography, The Line Between Dork and Douche.
By the way, I should say we haven't talked about Kevin Smith wrote this inspired by his producer, who developed a crush on a lesbian.
Yeah.
And he it became a thing because it frustrated Smith that he kept finding all this time for her. So there's elements of himself in all these characters, and so it was driven through this. And I
didn't know this, by the way.
Yeah, and I think if I'm right, the girl who ends up giving her the mic to sing it in this scene ends up being his girlfriend the producer's girlfriend for a while. One of the producer's girlfriends for a while. So it's
Is
all
this
just
Scott
interconnected.
Mosier? Or
I know it's the other. It's in someone else. Yeah.
Well,
but it's
the
all
other
interconnected.
part that's inspired by his own life is, although she was not a lesbian, Joey Lauren Adams had lived a very full, experiential life.
Yeah.
And he had a really hard time with that.
As guys sometimes do, especially in their young age, which was. Anyway, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I don't mean to cut you
please,
off.
because he was younger and absolutely no. And there's that great line later on where they talk about like, you don't want to know, but you ask anyway, and that's in Kevin Smith's own when Silent Bob finally isn't silent anymore,
Right.
Yeah.
and has that great diner monologue. You can tell that very much is coming from his own thing with her because he just felt insignificant, he felt insecure, and worked it out luckily through the movie and through the writing process as opposed to by breaking up with her and being an asshat.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things this movie is about, is how we perceive ourselves versus other people and their experiences and what that says about us.
Yeah.
And right now, so Alyssa's singing this song, who said she's singing it right to Ben. He's really enjoying it. And there's this blonde kind of right next to Ben, just kind of dancing. And one of the things that's fascinating watching this moment is, at what point do you start to get, oh, she's not singing to Ben? You know, like particularly the first time you see it.
I think it's when he gets real deep into it. He overplays the moment on purpose. So you think there's no way she's singing it to him, because she is so laser focused that's when he starts to act like the fool a little too much. You start to gravitate to the girl that's standing in front of him, because she also has like bleach blonde hair. You can't miss it. It's a very strong presence. So that's when I figure it out.
I feel like the first time I saw it, I had never seen a preview. I didn't know what the premise of the movie was. I went in totally blind, so I don't think I recognized anything until they until the two of them rush toward each other. She gives the finger of come here,
right?
And the girl goes instead of Ben. Ben has like this one moment where it's like, oh, I can't, and then the sirens start going off. The sound cue in that is so great.
It is.
And I think I don't think I was aware of it though until they rushed toward each other.
That's so great.
Yeah, I think I knew that this can't go right. I had the same reaction, but I don't think that I knew what was about to happen was going to happen. And when they come together, first Ben Affleck's reaction, but then Jason Lee's reaction is so great.
He's been hating it the whole time. And now he's happy as hell and he's clapping his hands.
And the music, and there's this siren like, wah, 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 and Jason Lee starts surveying the crowd and like realizing, oh, all the chicks in here are with other chicks. And suddenly and then the slow clap applause he brings in.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
And first of all, I love Jason Lee.
Yes.
I have always loved him in almost everything he's done, even in movies that I don't think are good. You know, he's one of those kind of unique people with a unique voice and a unique rhythm that's just really funny.
Where did he go?
Well, he's a Scientologist.
I know, but that means he should be extremely successful.
Well, he
was for a while.
Maybe he's hit that wall where he's good, you know, because he had that Earl
He got
show.
that My Name is Earl money, and he was like,
Chipmunks
over
money.
it.
He's good to go, maybe.
Oh,
Remember the Chipmunks money.
Yes.
Remember, that's good money.
See, I blurred that out because it makes me so sad.
Yes. He made that money, man.
And by the way, the blonde making out with Joy Lauren Adams, that's Jason Lee's girlfriend.
Oh. Yes.
So him clapping, you know.
He's just being supportive.
Just being very supportive.
Nice.
And we head off to the diner.
Yes.
This is a great scene. They're still making out, and then the discomfort on Holden's face is just so, because you feel for him.
Yeah.
You know, mostly because even if she was now making out with her boyfriend, it would be the same thing.
Yeah.
And this has just pushed it to a new level of awkwardness for him. And then we get into this conversation about whether or not a girl can fuck another girl.
Well, how can a girl fuck another girl? Were you talking about strap-ons or something?
Jesus, would you shut up?
What?
It's okay. No, Banky, I've never used a strap-on.
Well, then what's with saying fuck? Shouldn't you say eat her out, or at least modify the term fuck with something like fist?
Let me ask you a question. Can men fuck each other?
What, are you asking for my permission?
In your estimation.
Sure.
So, for you to fuck is to penetrate. You're used to the more traditional definition. You inside some girl you duped, jackhammering away, not noticing that bored look in her eyes.
Hey, I always notice that bored look in their eyes, all right?
And I understand if some people from the lesbian community are offended by the film now in retrospect, but in 1997, no one was talking about this on film in this way. Right? We saw lesbian characters in film before, but there was presented with like
pretty rare.
Yeah, but there was presented with like the wind blowing in the curtain. It was all beautiful. It wasn't like real. You know what I'm saying? And so you're seeing this a little more, having these conversations, and it's a little bit more. It's a little bit exploratory, and maybe it walks that line of being a bit exploitive, but I think it's conversations in 97 that we wanted to understand as a society, to accept it.
And I will say, there is a line of dialogue that I quote to my friends to this day. Given head, you got to treat it like CNN or the Weather Channel.
You gotta handle it like CNN and the Weather Channel. Constant updates.
You are such an idiot.
No, he's got a point.
It is so true. It is so true. It's up there with Chris Rock's in case of emergency break glass for a guy friend.
Yes.
It's a dick in a glass case. Emergency break glass. But that line is so true. And when I'm like in college and I'm still a virgin, like I didn't have sex until I was 22. So I'm like watching this movie and I'm like, this is what sex is like. They keep talking about like, you had sex in high school. I'm like, you did? Amazing. But that line, I was like, I'm taking that, putting it in my pocket, I will remember it.
At some point, you'll use that.
Every day.
And that's all I'm saying. It'd be different if chicks helped out, you know, pointed a guy in the right direction. Then there'd be no bullshit, no wasted time, and no chance for, you know, permanent injuries.
Permanent injuries?
And I think the thing that's so great about that scene is that then it gets into the conversation with Jason Lee and Joey Lauren Adams swapping sex adventures
which is
gone
Jaws.
awry.
Which is
Jaws.
You want to see something permanent? See that? I got that from Nina Rollins. Sophomore year, I'm going down on her, right? And out of nowhere, her cat jumps on her stomach and she does this big old pelvic thrust, cracks my tooth, and sends it down my throat. I had to get a crown for the stub.
I got that beat. Junior year, I'm going down on Cynthia Slater in her dorm room after we went club hopping. I'm totally drunk. And in the middle of it, I fall asleep right in her lap. She got so mad she digs her heel into my back. Right there. That's permanent.
And it was apparently supposed to be in Clerks. Oh. And then it didn't make the cut, so he put it in this.
Senior year, spring formal. I'm eating out Missy Kurt in her brother's car. She's like laying across the back seat, and I'm half hanging out, my knees on the ground. She's flailing around, and she knocks the parking brake off. The car starts rolling down the hill, and my left knee is cut up to shit. Like a kitty scissors class, cut it over paper dolls.
The clapping the ears.
The legs slamming hard into the ears. That is a true thing. That is a true thing. That is unsettling as hell when it happens. And you've hit the special spot, but like, and it's rare. But when it happens, it is such a shock, and you can have a neck injury from that.
Guys
I
do it
don't
too.
deny. Yes, I'm sure. Yes, I'm
Guys do
sure.
it too.
Well, and this is the thing about this movie is there was a time, you know, most of history since I will say the birth of Christ, they decided that sex was a bad thing, and we should not discuss it in any way. And you get to the Victorian era,
Well, ours,
yeah, exactly, in Western society, and that. It took until the sexual revolution in the 60s where we said, no, it's okay to talk about this. And then you get like 20 or 30 years where you start to have discussions. And boy, do we benefit from, and I've had basically this discussion with a gay friend of mine of like, well, how does it work? And what, you know, and hearing out like descriptions of, well, how does Grindr work? And going into the detail of like, and then what will happen? And then what will happen? Yeah. And the conversations are sometimes dirty, and they are hilarious, and they are fun, and they are educational.
And they're illuminating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they were done entirely supportively without, you know, and yet it's really funny.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that is really good. And that the world that we are moving into now, for all of these reasons that are amazing and positive, is a world where those conversations are going to be harder to have. And movies like this are going to be harder to have.
Well, but I think it depends. I think they might be harder to have, or it might be something where we have them in a different way. Like, you could say that people have to talk about Black culture in a way that's more respectful now, but then you get a movie like Black Panther, which is so unapologetically African-American, the Black experience, and that is its own version of a conversation. And I think with something like this, you do need films that are a little bit more mainstream and can be adopted in ways that are more mainstream in order to get a conversation started. And I don't know that necessarily being respectful and PC takes away the opportunity for some of this stuff. Like, there are moments in this movie where I straight up cringe because I'm like, oh, do you have to say it so often? Right. It's really uncomfortable and a terrible slur. And then there's moments where I just remember, like, it was a different time. It was a different place. 21 years is a lot of time.
It's a lot of time. Yep. Well, and this is why I say the Archie Bunker thing, because that's what Archie Bunker said. He said all the words.
Right.
But we when he said them, we disliked him saying that. And I would say even 21 years ago, we knew that what Banky was saying was, ugh, I don't like, I'm not comfortable with that.
Really
now
intense.
it's really bad.
You're like, don't with that. Oh my God.
Since you like chicks, right? You just look at yourself naked in the mirror all the time?
And even then, it was problematic because this scene in particular is what was going to give this movie an NC-17.
Right.
And they called in Alan Dershowitz, famous O.J. Simpson lawyer. That's who Weinstein calls in to represent this film and get it an R rating.
Wow.
Which it does. You know, and it's a weird thing because we don't see any nudity in this film. There's no violence in the film. It's just language.
But I also don't think we need to make this film anymore because we've moved on from this film. So our conversations are more nuanced now. But this is the foundation of the conversations we're having now because we had films like this, which I think is great in the long run.
And I do love, by the way, and you mentioned, I just want to hit it again, that this is an homage to the Jaws scene.
Yes.
The table even looks like the Jaws scene. There's even like a Ben Affleck, you know.
taking the shirt thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's great. And
it's awesome.
I love that kind of thing. We have to go have a meeting because we're going to sell the comic book to be a cartoon.
Yeah.
And who are we meeting with?
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon in a very small role.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny seeing him like this and so young.
Yeah, I love that though, that they always used to make sure that their buddy had a part in anything that they did.
Yeah.
I think that that's a really great part of their friendship.
Yeah, because that's, what's his face from Clerks. That's the main guy from Clerks, Kevin or whatever his name is.
Brian O'Halloran.
Brian O'Halloran, that's it. Yeah. He's in almost, he's in Mallrats too in the dating scene and then in this,
and we find out, you know, just how successful this particular comic of Bluntman and Chronic is. Oh, and then Alyssa comes and visits Holden.
Oh.
When she shows up, that is the beginning of this whole movie. Like the whole, everything's been leading to this moment because she makes a proactive choice to show up at their place of business and ask him to hang out. And this begins the process. She's working it out for herself, what she's feeling for him, because she's invited him out twice. She invited him out to
the club.
Yeah. And then they went out for a drink with Hooper. So there's this thing building between them. Neither one of them maybe knows what it is. But when she shows up, and speaking as a guy, when a woman shows up at your place saying she wants to hang out with you, you think possibly this could be something.
Well, there's no question that obviously he's going to think that. And, but I think you make a really good point. And something that just occurred to me as you were speaking is I was like, well, Hooper invited them to the club.
Right.
But did in fact Alyssa say, and who said don't have Banky come? Hooper says don't have Banky come, but did that come from Alyssa?
Maybe. Because she wanted to be... That's the thing.
Well, this is something we can't know is what exactly is she, at what level is she thinking about this guy?
Well, that's what I think people misunderstand about the movie is they think it's Affleck's journey. It's her journey too. She's figuring this out as she goes along as well. And that's what I think sometimes gets lost because it's Ben Affleck and it's chasing Amy. It's not chasing Holden, you know. So, but like they're both
chasing Amy is some girl we've never. Amy's a girl we never
we don't
meet.
even know who Amy is.
Right.
It's a metaphor.
It's it. There it is. Which explained later in the diner. But I think her journey is just as important here. And it struck me as I was watching it this time. This whole idea, like she shows up, she's the impetus, and then later on she talks about going to the con to hang out with her because she's coming up for the weekend. So these things that are laying the groundwork where both of them are like he's willingly going along, so he's responsible for his decision, but she's also kind of instigating the situation, which I think is an interesting psychological thing to explore in relationships. You know,
you're blowing my mind a little bit.
Well, I don't think she knows that she wants to be with him.
Well, I know, but I think you're right. You know, because I was always that she just wants to be friends until the moment that she doesn't, and now I'm kind of going, oh, there's a lot more gray areas in terms of, because we don't know what our motivations are a lot of the time. Right. You know, sometimes you're like, oh, I just really like hanging out with this person. Well, you're attracted to them. No, I'm not. No. And, you know, but somewhere in there, maybe you are, you know, and I think clearly that seems to be going on a little bit. I think, I don't know. I'm thinking about it.
I'm thinking,
I'm trying to remember.
Well, because I'm thinking, you know, yes, she shows up. Yes, she's proactive. Yes, she's like, I want to hang out with you. And yeah, you're blowing my mind a little bit too, because there is a conflict. And I mean, this is majorly skipping ahead, but she says like, I'm fucking gay. That's who I am. Yeah. And so much of her identity is wrapped up in that. And then we find out way later that there's a whole other backstory that we didn't know about.
Right.
And I think, whoa, yes, my mind is being blown because it's about like we're talking about like Me Too and Time's Up and the like LGBTQA I probably left a letter out, community.
Yes.
And that's all about identity. Like, do you identify as a feminist? Do you identify as a queer or transgendered person? Do you identify as a Black man? Like, where do you line up? Yeah. And it's about her being like, wait, this is my identity. And when you come in, how does that change?
Right. And that's what I think she says to him later. And I'm sure we'll get to it, of course. But I think this is the beginning of her figuring this process out. And because I think it would be disservice to her character and to Joy Lawrence Adams' performance to say, in the rain, she just made this decision to be straight. I think it was building through the whole movie from that first knock on the door at Holden's place of business. I think that's when she's starting to, because she said, I never thought a guy like you would come along in my life ever again, but I found you. And so I think this is the process. And her spending time with him is her being comfortable with this idea and figuring out, do I want to pursue this? Do I want to take this chance? She was never going to be the one to have the speech with him.
Right.
But it's gonna be him that has to do it.
Well, and this idea of identity that you must line up in some particular thing, it's incredibly empowering and incredibly important, and it is fraught with some stuff. Because are there people like the character of Alyssa who are comfortable in multiple worlds and are not perfectly lining up in one group? Yeah. And then to say that they have to make a choice, well, in a way, that's also pressuring someone on their lifestyle, So they go out on this nice walk. We talk a little bit about
fisting.
You're just jumping right in there. There was a little foreplay in the conversation. I was going to talk about Ben.
There's a nice walk. I'm like, it's fisting. Just get there. Because that scene, I was like, what? I still am like, nobody does that. Does anybody do?
She demonstrated quite clearly.
There are faces being made. If this was not a podcast, if this was video, oh man.
Well, I was in my 20s. Anyway, yes, go ahead. We're going.
I hope it was done to you.
Well, we are having. So for those of you who haven't seen the film, this is the conversation begins in talking about whether or not what virginity is.
Yeah. So you're still a virgin then?
No.
But you've only been with girls.
So you're saying a person is a virgin until they've had intercourse with a member of the opposite sex?
Isn't that the standard definition?
Again, with your standards. I think virginity is lost when you make love for the first time.
With a member of the opposite sex?
Why? Why only then?
Because that's the standard, let me tell you.
And that's sort of an interesting thing. And it's also the demarcation point of virginity as a movement into adulthood or into your sexuality as what this word means. And again, this is what I like about the movie is let's define these terms. Yeah. We all use these terms and then we don't talk. Well, what does that really mean? And how does this really work? And then they have arguments and counter arguments about how you define sex. This idea that Alyssa brings up of, do you mean physical penetration or emotional penetration?
I love that line.
Okay. Second revision. Virginity is lost through penetration.
Physical penetration or emotional?
Emotional penetration?
Well, I fell in love hard with Caitlin Bree when we were in high school.
Physical penetration.
We had sex.
Yeah, but not real sex.
I moved to have that remark stricken from the record on account of it makes you come off as completely naive and infantile.
Well, where's the penetration in lesbian sex?
And yes, we get to this idea of penetration, and she does a very graphic demonstration of something that might be done with her hand.
Yep.
Or someone else's hand?
Or someone else's hand.
Yeah.
And Holden's reaction to it is quite profound.
You're kidding me. How?
Our bodies are built to pass a child, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, but I mean, Jesus, doesn't that hurt?
Sure, but in that good way.
But they also talk about, like, sort of what we've been talking about, which is societal expectations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, if it's penetration, then that means that rape is not sex. The girl who's been raped is still a virgin because it's not the traditional quote unquote idea of sex. Yeah. And there's a lot of really interesting back and forth. Like, okay, is it the hymen? What actually, is it the first time you make love? Like what really counts? Mm-hmm. And the truth is the kernel at the center of that conversation, before we get to the fisting, is really profound and interesting because it's something that they do sort of try to define, but like I remember that's something I've tried to define, or I had to define for myself after that. It was like, oh wait, when does that actually happen? Like when is that a decision you make? Is that, what is it?
Well, it's funny. We talked before about identity, and in a weird way, this is relating to the same conversation to me, which is that, you know, in the identity conversation, we're saying, well, are you either this or you're this? And virginity is a binary state. You either are a virgin or you're not. You're either having sex or you're not. And yet, emotionally, the way we go through life is non-binary.
Yeah.
There are experiences people have that are so meaningless that they barely qualify. And there are experiences someone have where there might not be physical penetration in the traditional sense that were the real loving deal and that are far more significant. And like this conversation is getting a little bit towards that stuff as because what this movie is seeking, what it is chasing, in fact, is intimacy.
Boom.
You know, that's what this is all about. And they're trying to figure out what all that really means.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a fantastically subversive conversation for the time.
oh yeah.
For the time. Because of everything. Because like he keeps saying, like you said, Sasha, well, that's the standard. That's just the standard.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And she keeps pushing the boundaries. And the audience itself at that time is watching this film. The mainstream audience is watching this film going, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
And now
I hadn't
it's
thought
like
of it that way.
Now to have that conversation, it's like, well, the standard is there's 27 different kinds of binary sexuality, and there's an entire spectrum, and really there's all kinds of other things. So this movie would be either 500 hours long or 2 seconds long if it were made today. It'd be like, nope. Or we've got a lot to discuss. It becomes like the Game of Thrones of sexuality.
I'm going to need PowerPoint on this.
Let's not bring Game of Thrones into it. That's
No.
We're going to go off on a train trip to go to a new con.
Or so we think.
We're ready to go. Holden's there. Banky's there. And at the last minute, Holden bails to go see Alyssa.
But not before Banky makes an incredibly uncomfortable connection with a child and a bunch of porno mags.
You're right. We should give this a moment. This is horrible.
At least.
Takes some porn mags and puts them in the bag of a little kid.
Why? Who? This is. I've never understood guys who walk
Well,
around
wait,
porn
I
magazines.
didn't know if
Never understood.
he gives does he give them magazines, or he has an entire bag?
No, he has a
filled?
whole
Oh no! I said it wrong.
Yeah.
He has the bag. He puts them in Holden's bag.
He does.
That's
He
what
puts half of them in Holden's bag.
Yeah, because he can't zip his bag up because there's too much. And this again, I was like, man, this dude in the internet, like he would never leave his house.
Yeah.
There's so many things that have changed since this movie was made. And the fact that he's like, sometimes it's a spread brown eye kind of night, sometimes I like it, and every now and then it's time
horse.
for a girl and a horse. And you're just like, wow, you are a twisted mofo.
gets to some weird places.
It does.
We should point out that when I was young,
Hello.
a porn magazine was like gold. You know,
Oh,
like
yeah.
if you found that was rare. You know, when I was 13 or something, you know.
You had to find the hiding place. You had to put it back exactly the way you found it.
Absolutely. This was valuable. And now a 13-year-old growing up, it's like you can't not find porn.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to like put restrictions on to hopefully protect them from seeing it.
Because God forbid you search for something that no, not that kind of Chinese finger cuff.
What is German Scheiße?
Oh God.
I taught my son when he was like 3 years old to do Google voice search.
Oh.
But he didn't articulate very well.
Oh.
And his favorite character at the time was Dusty from the Planes animated thing.
Oh, yeah.
So he would go like, show me pictures of Spider-Man, or show me pictures of Wolverine. They said, showed me Dusty pictures, but it came out like Busty pictures. And there was another one. There was another one where he said, I don't remember what he was searching for, but it was like hot, wet, something. And I was like, no. And that's what I put the adult safe search thing on my iPhone.
Just see the gold light on his face.
So by the way, and I have to say, bailing on your partner when he's going off to Comic-Con, that's not cool.
Right. Well, she pages him, right? So we get that page, which is great. But he says, oh, a call from your master.
Yeah.
Right? So already Banky is having issues with the situation, right? We see that it's progressing now. He runs off and she says, oh, 1 minute and 5 seconds. You broke the record.
Such my bitch.
You were such my bitch. Right.
Yeah.
So and it's playful banter between the two. But once again, she's instigating the situation by saying to him, do you have to go to the con? Can't you stay with me?
Well,
I'm
there
coming up.
are 300 people that will be attending that con.
Yeah. But this is the thing. It's like, yes, you do have to go to the con.
He
You
should
agreed
have
to
gone.
go to the con.
Right.
You should go to the con.
Right.
You should.
Yeah.
And this is his moment to state his independence from the situation, but he doesn't because he's falling in love with her and he wants to spend time with her.
Absolutely.
And Banky is always going to be there. He might lose her if he doesn't try.
And now we kick into one of the cutest montages ever.
Yep, off to the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
Some skee ball.
Which is hilarious.
Oh man,
I like skee ball.
me too.
Yeah. There's
It's a great scene.
they break a pinball machine.
Yes.
It's a little
Got
ridiculous.
laid.
The switching with the little girl
Oh yeah,
is so funny
in
on the
Washington Square
steps.
Park. But as I was watching that, I was like, she is so delightful. She is so charming.
Yeah.
And his primary wow, you're great moment is biting the safety off of the lighter so
Yep.
she can light her cigarette easier. And I'm like, man, you could do better than that. Come on. But they have so much fun together and they have such great chemistry.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the song that they put it to is so fantastic.
Yep. And after this lovely, wonderful montage that seems so romantic, we're back with Banky, who's playing video games, and this is when he's really spouting some homophobic
yeah.
stuff.
It's because he's angry. He's jealous and he's angry. I'm not excusing it. I'm saying this is where it's coming
and
from.
I think we have lots of implications in this movie that he's gay, and that, you know, Kevin Smith is exploiting this covering your sexuality with homophobia thing. At least I think that's the implication in the film.
Probably.
But he is pretty darn nasty, and they get into a fight that is. I mean, he says she's programming you.
Yeah.
He's, you know, and Holden's going like, no, stop using this word. It's not sensitive, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what does it matter what I call people?
He's trying to be respectful. It's like saying, I get where you're coming from. I get why you're doing it. But if you don't mind, like, don't call her a dyke and don't call her these things like she's, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes to draw. And this
is when we get to
the
this
confrontation happens and the four-way.
Oh, yeah.
This is
forward
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's offensive, but amazing.
All right, now see this? This is a four-way road, okay? And dead in the center is a crisp new $100 bill.
And around this four-way street, there's Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, a man-friendly lesbian, and a man-hating dyke.
Yeah.
Who's going to get the $100 bill?
And he gets it right.
The man-hating dyke.
Good. Why?
I don't know.
Because the other three are figments of your fucking imagination!
This is some really good acting on both of their
Yes,
parts.
yes.
Ben Affleck's utter exasperation and Jason Lee screaming into his ear, the other ones are figments of your fucking imagination, is just beautiful.
And when you're young, you have those fights with your friends, like in the face yelling type thing. Those are the things that you have sometimes. And that makes sense for people in their 20s.
I didn't, but I don't.
Really?
I don't have those.
You didn't have friends who
emotions.
gave a shit about what's happening to you?
I didn't have fights like this with my friends.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Wow.
I had fisting and I had fights with my friends like that. In my,
Somebody really
You lived, though.
lived
You
their
really
20s
lived,
to
yeah.
the ultimate extreme.
That's why I'm tired now. And if you strip it down, it is what happens sometimes between friends when a woman comes in. Because two really solid friends sometimes can have a battle because she comes in, she takes the time, you have to factor her into the situation. It happens, right? This happens between dudes all the time.
And between women. It
Yeah,
happens
I'm
where,
sure-
like,
yes.
somebody gets a boyfriend and they
she doesn't show up
disappear.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing too is that in Banky's defense, despite his language and his really offensive but hilarious metaphor, is he knows that this woman is a lesbian and therefore there is no future to this relationship.
Yeah.
And he is on some level, despite his selfish reasons, trying to protect his friend.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we all have had moments where with our friends, we saw them doing a thing where it's like, dude, don't do that.
Yeah.
And
Or been told.
Yeah. And it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard to communicate. And in my experience, it's almost never successful.
Yes,
Of course it's not.
You're in love. When you're in love,
And it's the same way. You can't get somebody to quit smoking by telling them how bad it is for their health. They have to choose to quit smoking.
Well, and in that case, they know it's bad for their health.
Of course.
Sometimes with the relationship thing, they cannot see it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Surgeon's General warning is well posted on that cigarette box, but it is not well posted on that crazy person that you're dating.
Well, but at the end of that scene where the way it actually like ends is he's like, why are you doing this? Why do you have to always take the road of most resistance?
Banky says that to Holden.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Holden finally screams because I'm fucking in love with her.
Yeah.
And the look on Jason Lee's face of just he's crushed, he's sickened, he's angry, and then the scene just ends in that silence between them. But it's, you know, what do you do there? What else could you do? What else can you say? And how can you be there for your friend? The thing is going back to the Archie Bunker comparison, he has been so vulgar and offensive throughout that entire scene that when he got that jab, I actually had a moment where I was like, good.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not being a good friend. Yes, he's trying to support his friend. Yes, he's trying to like protect him. But at a certain point, it's like, mind your own business. Mind your bobber, dude. It's let him make his own mistakes.
Well, he's an unemotionally progressive person. I would say that. He's got a lot of blockage all over the place. But it's coming from the place of trying to protect Holden and care for him, even though the tactics he's using are really terrible.
I think it's definitely half coming from there.
Yes.
It's also coming from some other places. And he's a guy with no particular censor,
Sure.
And that's part of his charm.
But also Holden obviously has not been stopping him from having this censor their entire relationship, because all of a sudden it's an issue. That's why he says to him when he comes to the table, he says, why is this all of a sudden an issue for you? What I talk about, how I call her in the privacy of my own home into my business place. What is it an issue for you for? So clearly he's been this way for quite some time, and Holden's never yanked the chain on him, or not hard enough, clearly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, how often have you seen a close friendship or a relationship where there's sort of a somewhat introverted, very controlled kind of guy who's with another person who is extroverted and has no censor, like that's
Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example. Is that sometimes you're hanging around with someone because they're going to say the things and take you to places that you're not going to do. And I'm sure that Holden reins Banky in all the time to protect him from his own bad behavior,
Or he tries to.
Well, I'm sure that he does. Like I'm sure that he's when they go into that business meeting or whatever, Banky's turned down 20% because Holden's there kind of keeping it in control. Right. That's how a good relationship on some level works.
That's why the
And a good partner. A partnership.
That's how the Cine-Files works.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We will let all of you guess.
This is the quiet one.
I wasn't going to say because I felt, but it's okay.
Whatever you did is fine. Extrovertedness and occasional misspeak.
He's already talked about fisting people.
I mean, to be fair, Sasha brought it up. I just confirmed it.
I've talked about it in the movie. You talked about it in life.
You said, who does that?
I wasn't sure who was giving and who was receiving.
That's what I said too. That's what I said too.
Are you kidding? I had a physical this morning. I had a finger in my ass. It drove me insane. Ugh.
Insane.
Insane. I did not like it. It was uncomfortable. I have a headache ever since. All right.
Moving on.
He didn't do it right.
No.
Okay. So
all right.
Listen, I gave a warning.
You did.
Beginning
You
of the
did.
episode. So we go off together with Alyssa and Holden, and they buy some art, or she buys some art.
God. What's the name of the painter again? It's my own.
Oh, it's something Russian.
It's like my own Kandinsky, my own.
Yeah, it's something Russian.
Oh, man. Yeah, that hideous painting of birds.
Yes.
And here is the moment.
Why are we stopping?
Because I can't take this.
Can't take what?
I love you.
Oh my God. How badly did I want to have somebody confess their love to me in an SUV in the rain so that I could get out and storm off so they could chase me because it's chasing. And then we could kiss. Oh.
Did you ever set this up?
No. There's still time. There's still
time.
Sure.
I pretty much gave the Ben Affleck speech in a car.
Yes, you did.
I did.
To Karen.
To my wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did you get to the point where you said, and as much as I appreciate it, I would never need a picture of birds?
I didn't say exactly these words, but our version of that in 1990 or something.
Oh.
And she said, no. I just want to be friends. I don't want to do anything with you.
What?
Yeah. It was a good year and a half later.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And you hung in?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm determined.
So what turned her? Was she gay at the time?
She was into people that were not me. She wanted to be friends with me. Yeah. I was in what was, it's funny. So I've heard now, I was in what I would call the friend zone.
Yeah.
But what I've heard now, mostly from my students, is the friend zone is thought as a really abusive relationship.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, there are people, I will not say his last name, but there are people, there is a person named Dylan, there is a person named Derek.
What?
And both of them, the double D douches.
No.
They friend zoned me so hard, but both of them girlfriended me.
Oh.
We did everything except make out. And I think about it now and I'm like, you guys were fucking assholes because they knew exactly what they were doing. One of them, every morning when I woke up, first phone call that he would make was to me. Every night before we went to bed, he had to talk to me and then be like, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. But but nothing. Friend zoned so hard. And
Wait,
one of
wait.
them,
So wait, I don't understand the situation here. You wanted more, or they wanted more?
I wanted more.
Oh, I
and
see.
I'm a girl.
Yeah.
I have Willy Wonka's golden ticket to the fuck factory, a vagina. And I could not.
Someone
Hold on.
make that a shirt. And we're going to put that on the Cine-Files. We're going to sell that right now.
I couldn't. So Dylan, no last name.
Yes.
We invented a game for him because I was in love with him all throughout college and he was not into me at all. And it broke my heart. Years later, we developed a game called What's Gayer Than Gay for him. So what's gayer than gay? Giving a blowjob or getting fucked in the ass?
This is appropriate to the Chasing Amy podcast.
Totally. It is. Because it turned out that he refused to admit he was gay because he had done one but not the other. So we had to develop What's Gayer Than Gay to decide where that landed.
Sure.
The other one, Derek, asked to touch my vagina in a Japanese restaurant under an entire table of sushi. And yet,
the irony.
we
Yes.
never kissed. We never had sex. He friend-zoned me so hard. And it ruined my self-esteem. Ruined my self-esteem.
So I appreciate everything you said, having been the friend guy in multiple. That was basically my until I finally perfected it by ended up marrying her.
You're the success story
I
that
am.
everybody believes they can be.
Yeah.
And then we go through torture.
It was like fifth time's the charm.
You're the
Dude.
Chasing Amy, man.
But
You are the one guy. You're the false hope.
thank you.
Star
I
Wars,
wear that
a
with
false hope.
friend zone, a false hope.
A false
Steve
hope.
Morris, a false hope.
But
Yes.
here's the
God.
thing. That's not what my students are saying. They're saying to be a guy, friending a woman with the hopes of having a relationship is an abusive thing to do.
Oh, they're saying it's
This is
opportunistic.
opportunistic, and that it is manipulating them and being abusive and having a friendship under false pretenses and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And this is the thing, and this is everything is
both ways.
everything is
do that too.
well, everything is situational.
Yes.
Is that
We're human beings.
There are people there, and this is what's so hard in the world that we're in, is that there are things which are unquestionably abusive, and there are things which look fairly similar to that thing and are not. And figuring out which is which is tough, is a hard thing to do. And a lot of it has to do with intent, and you can't read intent.
Yeah.
You can't know when I say something, what is in my heart. It's hard to say.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it, like my grandmother called Asian people Orientals.
Oh.
And because that's what she
knew.
That was and she was not that nice about Asian people. She also referred to gay people as the gays. And her best friend was a gay man who she was friends with until they were 90 years old. She had no problem with homosexuality at all. The way she spoke for both sounds bad. For one of them was a little bit. For one of them wasn't at all.
It was just generationally.
It was just that was the language that she knew to use.
Interesting.
And so that's what I mean, is that it's hard to say. You could knock her for one thing and not knock her for the other thing. But if you just met her the first time and heard both those things, you put them equally.
Right.
Because we're all great. Banky
This is
is
the thing.
great. Banky
Absolutely.
is great. Through the whole movie, he's great. Yes, he's offensive, but there are other reasons why he's doing what he's doing.
Well, and there's reasons that people loved Archie
right in
Bunker
the end.
and they cried and were moved by him all these times, despite the fact that he was an insensitive bigot,
But also, you had like the Greek chorus of Rob Reiner, and there were definitely
and
like,
Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
came on and did that with him. Yeah, the whole.
So you sort of there was always like a reflection of that's not okay. This is so interesting though about kids today. Yeah.
The friend zone thing is a real thing.
Yeah.
They're changing the narrative of every. Like I feel like I'm hanging on by my fingertips half the time because things keep changing all the time. Because you don't know what's going to come out of your mouth that was right for your generation, but is completely incorrect for this generation. Because I don't think friend zone's a bad thing. That's just where you are when you want someone, but she doesn't see you as anything more than a friend. Oh well, I'm in the friend zone. I'll just be friends.
Oh man, see, I can't. Like as a grown up, like I did it a lot in my 20s, and the truth is I was totally in love with my husband for 2 years, and he like never paid attention to me, and then he friend zoned me for like a year. And he friend zoned me for like, not for a year, for like a month. And I literally have a journal entry where I was like, I've been down this road. I cannot do this again. I have to admit how I feel. And if he doesn't reciprocate, I cannot be friends with him, because the truth is if you're in the friend zone, anybody listening, if you're in the friend zone, get out. Get out like your name is Jordan Peele.
Yes.
If they don't like you, their friendship is not worth the detriment to your esteem
That's totally
and your
right.
ego.
Absolutely correct.
Admit it. Tell them how you feel. Be honest.
Yeah.
And if they don't reciprocate, you are not going to be Steve.
Yeah.
Well, and you asked before how I got out of the friend zone.
Yeah.
So I got to a point that I was so low and so sad, and it felt so like weakened, you know, like because
your self-esteem. Yeah.
The expression I called it was that I was a beggar at the ball. Was that I was just, oh, please let me just be there.
Yeah.
Just let me be around, you know, because I was so obsessed.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where, you know, and I won't go into the details, but I just got really angry and I went, well, screw her. And I was like, I don't need her. And I was really done with her. And that was when it turned around, about 2 weeks.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was because here was the thing, is that we're not attracted to needy people.
Yes.
Like need is not a thing that's attractive. Strength is attractive, independence is attractive, and all those, and I was not being who I was. I had broken myself, you know, on the shores of Karen and had become a very weak and different person. And when I finally became myself again, which was when I finally got angry and took my independence back, then she suddenly looked over and like, oh, this guy's really attractive.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's, you know, but that's not easy to do. It's not easy to change your emotional state. I mean, it's not that it was that she was attracted because I was angry. It's that getting angry was what allowed me to become independent again.
Yeah.
It has to be authentic.
Oh yeah.
It has to be authentic.
Yeah, you can't fake strength.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Friend zone.
Yeah, and we should talk about this scene because Ben Affleck's speech in the car is great.
It's classic.
Beautiful.
It does go on. There's a certain point where it goes on a little too long. I'm like, okay, dude, shut up.
No
Stop.
way. As a girl, I'm like, keep going. Milk it for all it's worth.
Ladies love it when you talk about your emotions.
Oh,
when it's
God.
real.
When it's real.
Well,
It's all
when I have a real one,
weepy.
I'll talk about it.
I love you, and not in a friendly way, although I think we're great friends, and not in a misplaced affection, puppy dog way, although I'm sure that's what you'll call it. I love you. Very, very simple, very truly. You are the epitome of everything I have ever looked for in another human being. And I know that you think of me as just a friend, and crossing that line is the furthest thing from an option you would ever consider, but I had to say it. I can't take this anymore. I can't stand next to you without wanting to hold you. I can't look into your eyes without feeling that longing you only read about in trashy romance novels. I can't talk to you without wanting to express my love for everything you are. And I know this will probably queer our friendship, no pun intended. But I had to say it. So I've never felt this way before.
And in classic Kevin Smith form, he gives this beautiful soliloquy about why he loves her, why they would work together.
It's a great soliloquy,
It's so beautiful. And then she says nothing, gets out of the car, and he, through tears, says, was it something I said? And it's such a wonderful little joke. And it lightens everything. And I feel like that's why that's the comedy sugar that gets everything else down. Because otherwise this could be a really schmaltzy, stupid scene.
Overdramatic.
But because they
or melodramatic.
Because they give the comedy and because there's a self-awareness, it actually is really charming.
It is. It definitely is. And it's interesting too because we've been joke for the whole movie, and now we have this scene in the car that's completely serious.
Well, and she's also playing it safe by buying the picture. By buying the picture, she's also in a way not being authentic about how she feels about him. Because what he says at the end of that monologue is correct. He says,
even if we never talk again after tonight, please know that I am forever changed because of who you are and what you've meant to me. Which, while I do appreciate it, I'd never need a painting of birds bought at a diner to remind me of.
and I thought it was a brilliant ending to that monologue because he's saying, this is legitimately how I feel. You're giving me trinkets to placate me, and this is nothing compared to this, and which I'm showing my heart on this day. Like, and that's what he's doing. And she buys that painting because it's random. It's totally random that she buys the painting, right? It makes no sense. He just made a joke about her not picking up the check, like again or whatever. So, are they dating? If he's constantly paying for something, Are they dating or not dating? He's constantly paying for them to go out, which seems to be the illusion. And then she buys this thing, $50 thing, which could have paid for the soup she was having, I think.
I think it's
$15. Is it 15?
I believe it was
not an expensive
75.
pink.
Yeah, it was 75, and she's like, I think they said, I'll give you 15. I believe it's 15.
Okay. Either way, they would have
Yeah.
paid for the soup. In 1997.
One quick thing on this, because, and I know we're digressing quite a bit in this scene, but it's an important moment. It's a lot of stuff going on. Is that, and I had this with myself in my younger days, and also, but when I was friend zoning it around the world, and I've seen it other times. Is that there's something I call there's something I call the good relationship juice, which is what it is that sometimes there's a friendship which is serving a lot of the relationship things. And because of that, someone is not moving on to actually jump into the relationship because they're getting the good relationship juice from this friendship.
Totally.
And so I think what she's doing, they're a couple.
That's what the double D's did.
Exactly.
They got girlfriend without actually but the best part of a relationship is boning. So it's like, wait, but you left out the best part, the kissing and the boning.
Sure.
Well, except maybe they were getting that somewhere else.
Yes. But they weren't getting you somewhere else.
One of them was getting it from a dude, and the other one, and the other one, what's gayer than gay?
Well, if it's a guy that's gay, that seems like he's not facing the sexual stuff, and he's getting the good relationship from you. He was
deeply, and is still, I believe, deeply closeted, which is why I'm not saying his last name. And then the other one had we'd both just gone through breakups, and he was really hung up on his ex, who had been physically abusive with him. So he was getting all the good girlfriend stuff, and then wasn't giving any of the penis.
Right. So she goes away in the rain, and then she comes back and yells at him.
That was so unfair. You know how unfair that was.
What, it's unfair that I'm in love with you?
No, it's unfortunate that you're in love with me. It's unfair you felt the fucking need to unburden your soul about it. Do you remember for one fucking second who I am? I just can't get into a relationship with you without throwing my whole fucking world into upheaval.
Listen, that's every relationship. There's always going to be a period of adjustment.
Period of adjustment? There's no period of adjustment, Holden. I am fucking gay. That's who I am. And you assume that I can just turn all that around because you've got a fucking crush?
And you think I can just throw that away because you have a fucking crush.
She tries to diminish it when she knows it's happening.
And
she tries to diminish it.
Broken.
He is.
Yeah.
And he walks away. And the next thing you know, she's jumping on him and they're making out in the rain. Awesome. And she's so tiny. And then we wake up on the couch of love.
And who walks in?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drops his chocolate milk.
Was it a Yoo-hoo?
Was it a Yoo-hoo? Probably.
Yoo-hoo. It's New Jersey. There must have been a Yoo-hoo. No disrespect to Yoo-hoo. It's delicious.
That's right.
Yeah.
They want to sponsor the
Cine-Files.
Yeah. And then we have a scene out on the stoop,
which is my favorite scene of the movie because it is stripped of all the vulgarity.
Hold on. You got the Catholic schoolgirl.
Yeah.
At the beginning. I was like, hold on.
Which I thought was
There's
unusual.
A very inappropriate underage
what was that?
Catholic schoolgirl joke
right?
that kicks the whole thing off.
That is
and we
very clearly what that is.
And we used to be able to joke about that without having it be a thing. But yeah,
I'm okay with that one going away, by the way.
Yeah, they could have cut that out. It's not necessary for what's happening. Because we already established who Banky is. But this interaction with them is the most authentic moment of friendship between them because he says to him,
Everybody has an agenda, all right? Everyone.
Yourself?
My agenda is to watch your back.
To what end?
To ensure that all this time we've spent together building something wasn't wasted.
Oh, she's not going to ruin the comic.
I wasn't talking about the comic.
And that's
a great scene.
Bam, man. I love that scene. No, look, the chasing Amy, like the rain, it's a fantastic, great scene. But this scene is like the authentic friendship scene that's been missing all up until this moment.
Well, because a lot of the time you're going like, why are you friends with this guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's because they do care about each other a great deal.
Yeah, they do.
And now we're going to have Alyssa and her friends.
I'm so in love. I know, I feel like such a goon, but I can't help it. We have such a great time together.
Who is it?
Someone you guys don't know.
That chick you left the restaurant with that night.
They're not from around here.
Don't even tell me you met her down the shore.
Ew, a bridge and tunnel Jersey dyke.
With huge hair and acid-washed jeans.
For your information, they don't have big hair or wear acid wash. They're from my hometown.
Why are you playing the pronoun game?
Oh, this scene
Woof.
is so great. I also use this line, the pronoun game. Why are we playing the pronoun game? We have such a great time. They're
from my hometown.
Yeah. And when she admits
don't know him.
that it's a guy,
Yep.
the friends, when they say another one bites the dust, it's, you see when she was talking about, this is who I am. Part of who you are is your friend group. Part of who you are your peers. By doing this, she's endangering her comic book, her friendship circle, her identity. Like there's a lot wrapped up in what she's doing.
And also at this time, you know, being a lesbian was not necessarily in the mainstream situation in terms of being accepted. So you found camaraderie in this group. And if one leaves the group to go be with a guy, and essentially become straight, it reinforces this idea from the more closed-minded people that it's a choice to be gay.
Yeah.
And that endangers the entire culture, I guess, or the entire gay community, because that idea at the time, right? Now we're more progressive or more, all that happens. It's not a choice. It is what it, or it can be a choice. You can be born with, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. You are able to determine what your identity is at any moment of your life. You have a right to do that as a human being. But back then, it was way more.
Yeah, I mean, this is right around the time where Ellen came out on her
that's
show
right. Yes.
and then was immediately fired.
Yeah, and immediately like blackballed.
Blackballed, 1,000%.
I love what you said, because that's very much how I feel. I mean, the idea of, in general, in the politics of this movement, the idea that homosexuality, lesbian, or any of these things was a choice was an important political stance, because based on the Judeo-Christian history, they said, well, you should change. You should. That's an evil thing, and they go, therefore you should do that.
We've got a concentration camp for that.
You should choose to like vaginas and not penises, and that's what you should choose to do. And the response to that is, it's not a choice.
Yeah.
I did not have a choice, and there's a reason that existed and still exists as an important political argument against fucking assholes who want to get into other people's business.
Oh, there you go.
But I actually think that, in my opinion, I like what you said, which is that maybe it's a choice, maybe it's not a choice. You get to do what you want to do. You want to love whoever you want to love. In my opinion, you go do it, and that's it. I don't need to know if you chose it or didn't choose. It doesn't matter. As long as everybody has consent and nobody's hurting each other, then go to it.
If you're happy, be happy.
go-
Be happy in whatever way you need to be happy.
But in this case, Alyssa's friends are not happy that she is choosing to.
They feel abandoned.
Yeah.
They feel betrayed.
As they say, another one bites the dust.
Well, and I will say also, getting into a relationship, like before they even get to the fact that it's a guy, there's the whole thing about like, you guys are, why are we even helping? We haven't seen you in a month because she's disappeared, because she's in the relationship zone, which I think is so interesting, because there is something to be said for when you have a really strong group of friends and somebody finds a significant other and suddenly like disappears.
Yeah.
But I really, really think that this is a great moment too in the film, because Joey Lauren Adams, who has been so vivacious and so beautiful, and she's got this moment where she giggles and she's like, I'm so in love.
Yeah.
And then when her friends don't respond positively, you see just how vulnerable she is. Yeah. And it's I'm talking about it, I'm getting the chills. It's one of my favorite moments of acting from her in this movie.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Now we're in bed with her and Holden, and he's asking, why me?
Yeah.
Which is the end of the relationship.
It is.
It's
it
the
is.
end
It doesn't
of
happen
the
in hockey.
relationship.
It's so true.
You don't.
Not at the hockey rink. You
No.
don't ask.
You don't.
Just say thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for loving me.
Yes. And you only learn this by fucking up as many times as I did. Asking this question in bed with a woman. Why me?
Yeah.
You work so hard to get her. Why do you question that you got her?
Be
Just be
grateful.
grateful. Worship the ground she walks on. Be grateful. Don't question yourself. Don't have struggles with your own self-esteem, your own insecurities, because then she will get it in her mind. Why did I choose it? Or you start to erode.
Or you get an answer you don't want to hear.
Or you get an answer you don't like. Yeah. Exactly. And that's when he asked that. And it's funny. I'm 47 now. Looking back, my 20s, I had these. And you look back, you see these movies, you go, the lessons were there the whole time. You moron. You fucking moron. But that's why I love these movies. And that moment is so real. So damn real.
Yeah.
By the way, the sound you just heard was Roka banging the mic against his head. In case you were wondering.
Truth.
But she does have a a good story that she
A
tells.
lovely and eloquent answer.
Fantastic answer.
That
She should have been satisfied with. Shut the fuck up and enjoy the relationship.
Well, there's that thing, like you get the sore in your mouth and your tongue keeps going to it, or you get the little scab and you keep picking it, and like you
It's
just
not
can't
just
leave it
him.
alone.
Banky plays a very big part. Like
Yes,
we
he
are.
does.
Because that is the next scene. He shows up with a yearbook. And on page 48 of the yearbook is finger cuffs.
And this is where he goes too far, in my opinion.
Well, because
In
he's
his friendship.
sabotaging.
Yes.
He's now sabotaging his
actively
friend's
sabotaging.
happiness.
Yes.
It's up to our friends to find their own doom.
Yeah.
Like it's not our job to speed it up.
Good. That's a great line.
That's a great line. Yeah.
And so we find out this story from the guy in front of the quick stop, and
I think that guy's in Clerks or Mallrats. I can't remember.
Alyssa Jones.
Alyssa Jones.
No, Alyssa Jones. I mean, I know Alyssa Jones.
Great monologue.
It's a great monologue. Although, another line I've stolen from that, getting filled out like an application.
Hell.
Yeah, that's a good one. But that scene, as I was watching it, that was when I had another moment where I was like, so what? Who cares?
Right.
So what if she was a lesbian? So what if she was into dudes? So what if she took on two guys at once? So what?
Exactly.
I mean, I know we don't have a movie if you don't care.
Right.
But it was one of those things where I was like, why embrace it? That's the reason she's good in bed for you now.
Right.
Be grateful.
well, you're exactly right, and that is the lesson of the movie. But that is the lesson that he is not prepared to
Right.
hear yet.
Right. Which is what Hooper tries to tell him.
Maybe what's really troubling you is that your fragile fantasy might not be true.
What does that mean?
Hold on. Don't even try to come off like you don't know what I'm saying. Men need to believe that they're Marco fucking Polo when it comes to sex. Like they're the only ones who've ever explored new territory. And it's hard not to let them believe it. Let my boys run with it for a while. Feed them some of that "I've never done this before" bullshit and let them labor under the delusion that they rock in my world. Till I can't stand them no more, then I hit them with the truth. It's a sick game. The world would be a better place if people would just accept that there's nothing new under the sun, and anything you can do with a person has probably been done long before you got there.
That scene for me, because Hooper has the moment where he says men need to feel like they are Christopher Columbus
Yes.
when it comes to sex.
And it's true. It's stupidly true. We really
Is
do.
it?
For some guys, it is. For some guys, it is. When we're that young, we think we don't want. Some of us have a real hang up, and I think it's being brought up maybe sometimes in an ultra religious situation or this kind of thing where you put the Madonna complex on the woman, and you're like, if she's had multiple sex partners, and you're in your early 20s. At least in my generation, right? Nowadays, it's a fuck fest from 12 on. But like nowadays,
Jesus, I'm pregnant right now, and I'm
sorry,
like, please don't say that. I really hope my child does not have a fuck fest. Oh man, I mean, would you be okay if your son had a fuck fest?
Well, he's
anytime
6
soon?
now. That means that in
He's halfway
2024.
there.
listen, Oprah did the whole thing about having dick sucking contests at the mall. These teenagers.
Well,
so
that's
it's
why
true.
my daughter will never go to the mall. You don't want to go there.
The mall of all
I
places.
don't know about Fuckfest at 12, but
just
the
saying.
world has changed.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That is
Way
definitely
more
true.
freer about sex, and the internet is a
internet
huge reason
is
for
a
that.
part of it.
Yeah, so so back then you had that thing. So when you had multiple sex partners, a guy was like, it really worked on his self-esteem or his insecurity because it was just like, you kept seeing the other person doing the things that you're doing with her. Nothing was new, but you don't have the emotional maturity to understand. Actually, it is new because you're doing
You're
it
doing it
with
with
her.
that person.
Yes.
Well,
and
so
love.
they talk about asking the number earlier in the
Yes.
movie.
Oh, it's the worst thing you could ever do.
I have you asked recently?
Oh, not recently, but I have in my life multiple.
Do you know your wife's?
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like when it's your wife,
Well, first of all, we started dating when we were 21.
Yeah.
You know, so my number is very small.
Yeah.
And hers is, well, I won't go into any detail about my wife's number. That's entirely up to her to reveal. But yes, I know what it is.
oh, that's really sweet though. Well, I can say very personally that I decided not to have sex until I met somebody who I really liked after I went through a bad period where I was not doing that. And I at one point was like, I'm just not going to sleep with anybody until I meet somebody who I really, really dig. And I didn't sleep with anybody until my husband.
Right.
Which it had been 3 years.
Wow.
And he still found out about somebody who I'd slept with before and cried. And I was like, babe, I was damn near a virgin again by the time we got together. But there's things like that come back up, and it's just, it can't, you got to be Christopher Columbus.
I think.
Or you got to be emotionally mature and just deal with it and move on.
I mean, A, we all want to be special.
We do.
And B, like, I do think you're right. I think it comes from, we're still not that far from you're going to marry, two virgins are to get married in an arranged marriage. And that's not.
That just sounds like a terrible idea.
It does in all sorts of it does in all sorts of ways. But, like, I totally think that it's impossible to not have those thoughts.
Well, I mean, from your end as a woman, Sasha, like your girlfriends, like, do they have issues if they're the people they've like certain relationships with men have had multiple sexual partners?
So I'll just say this: I can't speak for my girlfriends, but I'll speak for me. My husband dated a girl named Becky right before we got together,
with the good hair.
And I'm like, Becky, you only let him touch one boob. One boob, Becky.
Left boob or right boob?
I have asked many times. He doesn't remember.
How could you not remember that?
Because it was one time and it was one tit. But I'm
fair.
like,
remember if it was the left hand or right hand, if she was facing you.
No, I'll ask. But I Googled her. I found out where she lived.
What?
I found her on Facebook.
Don't tell me she's dating Derek right now.
Nope. No, Derek's still single. But I totally dove deep. And there was another girl that I found out about, and it's another story for another day, but I broke a chair out of anger without actually breaking a chair. I did it like Carrie. I yelled, and the chair collapsed underneath me out of just like pure anger and hatred. It was my witch moment. It was amazing. I didn't do anything. I didn't move. I just went, and I sort of squinched up, the chair
don't push that much
broke underneath me. I know, sorry.
Can I say something?
But I will say, yes, my girlfriends, if you have somebody who is very sexually experienced, I have one girlfriend who's totally fine with it. They've been married for 16 years and he slept with half of LA. They have like a 12-year age difference and she's totally cool with it. And they have a great and loving relationship, but they're both totally crazy. And then I have other friends who are like, he slept with one person before me and I'm never going to let him live it down. There is no, there's no right way.
But I want to say something dangerous, and maybe I'll get me in trouble. But men stalk physically, driving around, show up here, but women stalk on the internet, and they're really good at it.
Really good.
I mean, really good at it.
Oh yeah.
My ex, she stalked her ex-husband for 2 years and then found out he got married. I'm like, how did you know he got married? Well, I found his future wife's Instagram because he blocked me on Instagram. So I went and found this thing on the internet that said her name, and then I looked her up and I found her on the Instagram. I'm like, the fuck is wrong with you? It's madness.
I found the guy who I was in love with in high school who didn't like me back via his wedding registry that I found like 20 years after the fact. Yeah, and I was like, he didn't age that well, but she's really cute.
Did you like his taste in flatware?
I didn't look at the registry, but I just found the names and I Googled the names together and I was like, he married way out of his class.
Wow.
Yeah, he did not age well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not. I'm not
fair,
with them.
fair.
All right, we're at a hockey game.
Yeah, let's at a hockey game.
This is so uncomfortable.
But this is such an incredible switch because he seems like he's okay with Hooper. Like he's coming to the place where he might come to terms or have a conversation with her. Like Hooper's encouraged him to have they had the funny moment, like you said, the funny sauce with Hooper talking to the young black kid, and he says, "You see that white man over there? Don't you ever take your eyes off that white man, right?" And poor Holden is like, he's playing into it because he has to, because it's his friend. So I think he's in a better place. And then we have this hockey game moment, which seems like such a weird switch for his character from what has happened before.
Yeah.
Well, and he's about to be full asshole.
Full asshole. Complete asshole.
Yeah. You're in a public place. Yeah. You're totally blindsiding her with this thing.
Wrong time to do it.
It's you start with finger cuffs.
What's with finger cuffs?
But I love that it's intercut with the hockey fight.
Do you know a guy named Rick Darris?
It's really funny.
But
it's a funny scene.
Man, it's so uncomfortable and so brutal.
This one day, Rick pulled his dick out and started chasing me around the house with it. Right in front of Cody, man. I couldn't believe it.
Rick pulled his dick out? Really? What did you do?
I I blew him while Chloe fucked me.
And I do love the guys who are sitting next to them who are like, I told you these were good seats.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have it's a great back and forth between the comedy and the drama in this scene. But then once they're outside and she's blowing her top and he is demanding answers.
What the fuck's wrong with you? How could you do all those things?
Easily! Some I did out of stupidity, some I did out of what I thought was love. But good or bad, they are my choices. And I am not making apologies for them now. Not to you, or not to anyone. And how dare you lay a guilt trip on me about it, in public no less. Who the fuck do you think you are, you judgmental prick?
This was the scene that for me, watching it now as opposed to watching it a couple of months ago or watching it back when I first saw it, I was having the hardest time with because I was like, this is none of your business.
Yeah.
You do not get to judge her. Right. You do not get to shame her for this.
Shame is what he's doing.
She changed her entire sexual orientation, lost friends, has given so much. Get the fuck out with this massive judgment bullshit. I was so upset watching that scene. I could not take it.
There is a world of fucking difference between typical high school sex and getting fucked by two fucking guys at the same time. They fucking use you.
No! I used them!
Where's your perspective? Like, why aren't you not seeing the whole picture of all that she has sacrificed? And you're whining.
And it's so, he looks so sad and stupid and self-destructive and cruel in this scene. You know, it's so funny. It's like his insecurity is causing him to hurt the person he loves. That's all the scene is about. And what's interesting is that he's not upset about the girls. He's not upset about the women he slept with.
No, it's the men.
It's the men. Dudes. You would think that it's his homophobia that is the problem here, but in fact it's not. It's his own insecurity about who he is. How many girlfriends has Holden had?
Ooh, good question.
Oh. Never addressed in the film.
Maybe two?
It ain't a lot. I don't think it's a lot.
Yeah.
I think he's a sweet, smart, talented guy who is not very experienced.
And doesn't understand that it's okay that she can be.
Yeah.
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 Do you mean to tell me that while you have zero problem with me sleeping with half the women in New York City, you have some sort of half-assed, mealy-mouthed objection to pubescent antics that took place almost 10 years ago? What the fuck is your problem?
I want us to be something that we can't be.
And what's that?
A normal couple.
A normal couple.
Who wants to be normal?
Well, Anne, what's your definition of a normal couple?
Right. It's kind of like your definition of virginity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
Right.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, as you said, this is a guy in his 20s. They're very stupid. and all of us, we were. And he's just going from where his emotional insecurity is taking him. And what he is doing is this woman has literally been nothing but lovely and wonderful to him.
Yes.
She has been as awesome as could be.
But
yes,
she did lie to him. She did not tell him when he asked, like, so you've been with guys? He asked it very early in the movie when they're on swings. Yeah. And she says no. And she's never been with a guy. So she did lie to him. And then she says to him, I'm sorry I lied to you in the fight. She says, I'm sorry I lied to you. I should have told you.
Feel so special.
I thought that saying this would in a way that nothing I'd said about complimenting you made you feel special. I thought this would make you feel special. So even when she was lying to him, she was doing it out of love and care for him because he seemed to have a really hard time with her past.
Yeah.
And I don't want to vilify her for lying or say he's right for flipping out like he did. But I will say she did lie, but she lied from a good place. Yeah. And he can't even see it in that moment.
Well, and she, it's like there's certain cardinal rules with me. And one of them is don't bring the shit out in public.
No shit.
You know what I mean? Like
no shit.
That's just for me. Yeah. Like I will have this conversation with you. Yeah. We are not going to have this here.
There's nothing more uncomfortable watching couples fight in public, right?
Horrible. Yeah. Horrible. Yeah. And we mentioned this normal couple comment. And after that is she just freaks out and falls to the ground.
She loves him. She loves him. In that moment, she could easily have just screamed at him and ran off as well. But in that moment, she breaks down because she loves him.
But also, he's the one who walks away.
Yes. Yep. What an asshole.
He walks away and leaves her in her misery because he isn't man enough to handle it.
Right.
Yep. That's exactly what's going on. We're back with Jason.
Yeah.
a little sitting on the couch. They have a moment. It's a nice moment.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they cut out Ben hugging him and crying on his shoulder.
Oh.
I'm glad they cut that out.
It is a really good cry, though.
Oh, is it?
I have a girlfriend who has always said that there's this moment in Chasing Amy where he's sitting on the couch and he just he lets the tears well up and then he blinks and one just falls down his cheek.
Nice.
Was the moment that she fell in love with Ben Affleck.
There it is.
Yeah, we all have our moments.
Let's meet Jay and Silent Bob, shall we?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in the diner.
Yeah, we're paying them off because now we find out that they are the inspiration for this comic that they're making all their money from. And here we have Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith.
Oh, man.
Smells like someone shit in the cereal. Nuge. Man, what took you guys so long? What are you at the mall again?
Bitch, don't even start, all right? We stopped that shit years ago.
Jason Mewes is something.
Jason Mewes is Banky.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. It's so funny. There are people that are actors, and there are people who are just that's who that guy is.
Yeah.
And some sad producers and directors don't know the difference, and they'll try to put the person who's not really an actor in another role. It's like, no, they can't do that.
Yeah,
they can only do this. And Jason Mewes can be Jason Mewes.
Think good, you fucking ninny shithead, because now she'll be all true and blue and shit. Bitch tasted life, yo. Now she's selling for your boring, funny bookmaking ass.
But he's just sitting there eating sugar with a spoon out of the diner pour spout. And then we get this brilliant Kevin Smith finally speaking as Silent Bob. Mm-hmm. It's more than one word. And he delivers the monologue that is the central tenet of the film's title.
Yeah.
So there's me and Amy. And we're all inseparable, right? Just big time in love. And then 4 months down the road, the idiot gear kicks in. And I ask about the ex-boyfriend, which, as we all know, is a really dumb move. But you know how it is. You don't want to know, but you just have to know, right? Stupid guy bullshit.
So I hate to break this to you, but I love the fact that he gives a monologue. I don't like this monologue.
Wow.
Why?
Because when you do, this is just, maybe it's just the writer in me where this is where I go, look, if you're going to do the inspirational metaphorical monologue, it shouldn't be on the money exactly what the movie is
So
I've just been watching. It's so on the nose. Okay. It's like, oh, you're telling exactly the story that I've just been watching.
So I'm totally weirded out by this, right? And I just start blasting her. Like, I don't know how to deal with what I'm feeling, so I figured the best way is by calling her slut, right? And tell her she was used. I'm out for blood. I really want to hurt this girl.
It's funny. I probably liked it the first time I saw it, and having seen it a few times now, I'm like, okay, this is a little too much exactly what we need to hear at this moment.
Interesting.
You know, that was my feeling about it.
Oh, you mean it's too aware of the moment.
Yeah.
It's too aware of the moment.
Gotcha.
And it's like, I am obviously telling you exactly something that relates direct. And there's no
nuance
in the metaphor.
Yeah,
Yes.
I hear you. I hear you. I think I've always gotten so giddy over the fact that Silent Bob is no longer silent.
Exactly. It's a great moment.
I just took it. I was like, it's words. It's words.
It's a monologue in a Kevin Smith movie. I buy it. I mean,
by Kevin Smith.
Yeah, by Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, side note, a lot of smoking in this movie.
Oh, yeah. I thought about that too.
Made me really uncomfortable. I was like, that is so bad for you guys.
By the way, I was watching, I don't think Kevin Smith smoked because he didn't look like a natural smoker in this scene. That's something I always do because it's very noticeable when people who don't smoke are trying to smoke. Is it true that he did not smoke weed until much later in life?
I don't know.
He always said that in his podcast.
Let's ask.
Okay.
I have no idea.
He can come on the podcast anytime.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
we're only 1 degree away from him.
We cut to Sad Holden alone on a swing.
No.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're back at the apartment, at the studio. We've got Alyssa and
I assume they've
Becky
made up.
on
I assume they've made up at some level that she would show up at his place.
I think he invited her over and said, please, it's very important that you come. I need to speak.
So
to you."
she's still in love with him. She still wants to somewhat save the relationship when she walks through the door, I think.
I don't think that's necessarily
I
true.
think that's a hopeful possibility, but
It might be a possibility.
Yeah.
But people do, like, if you've broken up with someone and you say, no, I need to see you. People do, out of kindness, show up sometimes far too often in relationships they don't want to be
That's
around.
probably true.
well, and also we don't know that they've broken up. We just know that he's been miserable, and the last interaction they had was this horrible back and forth.
Yeah.
And they might not have spoken since then.
Because we see his reflected, but we don't see what Alyssa's going through during their time apart.
Right.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
So Ben's going to make a speech.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, as if what he did in the hockey rink wasn't bad enough.
Yeah.
This is so... What's so fascinating about his character, I love that his character always has a plan.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to think it through and I'm going to work out a way to make this work.
I've been going over and over and over this whole thing, and I've dissected it 1,000 different ways. Banky, there's tension between you and I for the first time in our lives. You hate me dating Alyssa, and you want me to sign off on this whole cartoon thing.
How perceptive.
Alyssa, you and I have hit a wall because I don't know how to deal with your past, I guess.
And he explains, he's to blame because he feels inadequate, points out that Banky is in love with him because he's gay. I love Jason Lee's reaction to this.
You're in love with me.
What?
And then he goes and kisses him. And there's a great stunned expression on Jason Lee's face.
And Joey Lauren Adams' face.
Yeah, yeah.
That seems fairly easy to me that he just got away with kissing this guy in this moment. And Alyssa wants to go away, and he's like, nope, I figured it out. Here's the plan.
I know what we have to do. And then you, Banky, you, Alyssa, and I, all of us, can finally be all right.
Please don't say it.
We've all got to have sex together.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Even in 97, I knew this was a dumb fucking idea.
Mm-hmm.
This is a terrible, terrible idea.
Yep.
It's just like, that'll take care of everything. And it turns to Jason. I love this. So what do you say? There's a long pause, and Banky says, sure.
It's just a friend. It's a friend moment. It's a friend moment.
That is a real friend moment.
Yes. He's willing to do it. He's willing to do it.
Wait. But is it a friend
moment? There is not a male
Or
friend
is
I
it-
have that I would do a threesome with. Not
I was
a
going to
fucking
say,
male friend.
is it a friend moment or is it
Or
this
is it-
the
yes, you're
culmination
right.
of I've wanted this for a while?
I'm in love with you, and I do want to have sex with you.
I don't know if I'm that
I don't
far.
think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so because because when Alyssa says no,
He goes, thank God.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think it is. I think it is. He just said you're in love with me. No response.
Right.
Kissed him. No response. You want to have sex? Sure. I think he is in love with him and terrified of it, and thinks that this is the moment that it's finally he can become the gay man, or not the gay man necessarily, but. And then when he says no, he was terrified of the moment. It's like, oh, thank God I don't have to do that.
Oh,
Like that's how I've always interpreted it. I don't know, but that's how I feel.
Maybe he's just afraid of his gayness.
Well, that's what I think the whole movie, he's afraid of his gayness.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I buy it through the whole movie. Although I hear it, of course. I don't know if I buy it necessarily. I don't buy if I think he's afraid of gay, period, as a foreign thing to him, as a threat to him. But I don't necessarily think he's gay or has gay tendencies. I just think he's afraid of the entire thing of what it is. He's afraid of something different and new and powerful. Because even he's mad at Alyssa, not just also for being gay, but also because she threatens his security of his friendship.
Right.
So he's threatened by anything that rattles his world or his concept of the world or makes him have to say things in a certain way that's respectful. And so I don't know. But I mean, that's what's great about film, interpretation.
Exactly.
Our own interpretations.
And sometimes dirty words.
Yes.
And Alyssa has a great response to why she doesn't want to do this. And it's actually really smart.
Doing this won't help you forget about the things you're hung up on. It'll create more. Maybe you'll see me differently from then on. Maybe I'll moan differently, and then you'll resent Banky and become suspicious of us. Or you'll alienate him because of it. And you'll grow to blame and hate me for the deterioration of your friendship. Or what if, and God, I sincerely doubt it, but what if I saw something in Banky that I've never seen before? And I fell in love with him and left you.
Yeah.
Yes.
What if I moan differently or feel differently or
so
look at him
true.
and, then you're going to, not only is that going to destroy our relationship, but it's going to destroy your relationship with this friend of yours.
Yeah.
She sees down the line all the bad things that can happen. I think it's a great moment from her.
It is.
Absolutely. He's a selfish son of a bitch because
I
he's
think
setting
so.
this all up for himself. Like, this will help me get better and come to terms with our relationship if you sleep with my best friend.
But can you imagine? I mean, it's such a bad idea.
Right? Like, on so many levels.
Such a bad idea.
Well,
and she's only talking about the tip of the bad idea. Like, the tip of the levels of the bad idea is her mentioning,
they do more than
if
tip.
they moan. Hey, they put the whole fist in. But they mention the moaning and all that.
Again, I gave a warning.
Yeah, right. Because, I mean, if you've ever been in a relationship and the person you love says the name of someone else they've been in a relationship in a moment of like sex or embrace, like, it can mess with you. So imagine her moaning differently with another man in bed with you. And then she says, like, God forbid I see something in Banky, and it's God forbid, and I fall in love with him over you. How are you going to deal with that? And it's so true.
Well, and the other thing too is he is being he was mean to her, and now he's being 100% selfish. This is entirely about him. And he hasn't gone like, oh, what can I do to take care of you? Who I last left collapsed in a parking lot, screaming and crying. He's going, this is what I need to feel more because I'm insecure. Do this for me.
It's so selfish. And on top of it, it really does not speak to what we were talking about before, which is, I judged you, I shamed you, I did all of these horrible things, which is why her response of slapping him and saying, I'm not your whore, is such a great moment, because it's like, you immature, ridiculous man-child. How could you possibly think that this would fix everything? Okay, and you can totally not answer this. Have either of you ever been in a threesome?
Nope.
No.
Would you ever be in a threesome?
2 girls and a guy?
I'm just saying a threesome, there are 3 people involved.
No, I need parameters of this question before I answer it. I would never be in a threesome with another guy. How about that?
Okay, 2 girls.
Yes.
You would do that?
Yes, I would.
If you were in a relationship with one of the women, would you invite another woman into the bed?
No.
So they would have to be 2 totally random people.
Yes, sure. Or
so this is
2
like
people I know.
So this is like a porno fantasy, but in like actual relationship.
Yeah.
Somebody who you're sleeping with consistently. A third party.
No. And I have friends who do that, and it bothers me that they do that because I think it can threaten the relationship.
So again, I don't want to shame anybody. I don't want to judge anybody. I think threesomes are a horrible idea.
There you go.
Because in any situation with 3 people, 2 people walk in front, 1 person walks behind, somebody's left out, and it's just not a good situation.
It's true.
What about you, Steve?
So first of all,
tell us, Steve.
I'm with you in terms of, I don't know how this works out well, but my answer is, yeah, sure.
You would?
Yeah. And if under the right circumstances, with the right person.
Your wife.
Yeah, she's one of them.
With another guy or with another girl?
I would definitely prefer another woman. Not terribly interested.
If she came to you and said, I want to sleep with another guy with you.
Well, I will say, like, you know, like, these things are complicated. Listen, if we've learned anything from Chasing Amy,
absolutely, there's no judgment.
Is that people, you know, people get to experience life and love how they want to love.
So does she have a best friend? And would you ever?
This is a whole other episode now.
Welcome
to the Sasha Pearl Raver
There is
show.
a blush on
I will be Raver's right now.
Well, and I'm also going, this part of the podcast will have to be approved by my wife.
No, it's fine. We don't have to. I mean, I have friends who have open marriages, which is something I could never do because I am way too jealous and territorial.
And that's good you know that.
Oh, yeah. No, we had a conversation the other night, and the conversation was, okay, let's say I was in space for 24 hours. It actually turned into a Black Mirror episode. I've been sent to space, and the only way to get me back from space is to have sex with someone else. Would you do it? And he's like, you would kill me. I'm like, that's right. I would, but I would also kill you if you left me in space.
True.
That's easy.
You're a dangerous lady to date.
But who would you have sex with? Like, in my fantasy, it's like, okay, I'm going to have sex with Keanu Reeves because you're in space. And in his, it's like, who are you sleeping with? Which of my friends are you calling? Who are you calling up? How are you going to do this thing?
Well, and this goes into the wanting to be Christopher Columbus and not necessarily wanting to know about those other details. Right. But as you might remember in our previous podcast together, in a discussion of rubbing people's feet, I've seen other guys rub my wife's feet. That's okay.
Okay, here we go.
Never let that happen.
Your wife's in space. You have to have sex with one of her friends.
Ooh,
I'm
to
not
get
going,
her back from space.
I absolutely would. I'm not revealing who that might be.
No, I'm not saying, but
Sure.
you would to get her back from space.
Sure. But wait,
you
do
imagine-
I want her back from space?
Oh,
Well, that's up to you.
Wow.
But can you imagine the detriment to your relationship afterwards? She would
You
be like,
very-
thank you for being.
Thank you for getting me back from space.
But don't you think there would still be some lingering, but I can't believe you did that?
Or there might be.
There would be no. There would be no. I can't believe you did that. There might be some Christopher Columbusness, like, oh, how was it? And all that.
it?
I'm not saying it wouldn't introduce those things in a relationship. And then I would go, you know what, honey, this is a perfect chance to set up your threesome. So now we can invite her over, and now
And
you can know.
see it.
You can see.
See, this is like the new "What's gayer than gay?" in the mouth or in the butt.
What would you be willing
It's
to do?
what would you do if I was in space?
The answer is, I mean, like, now if it was, now you get into, if you want to ask questions, it's like, you have to have sex with another person of your gender or someone you find physically repulsive or some, now these are harder questions.
Well, physically repulsive or something that's not like within your sexual proclivity, I think is one thing. It's like the idea of desire is where I think you get into really
More
tricky
dangerous.
stuff when you're in a
Right.
relationship, which is why when Alyssa says like, you can't do this, this is not how people function. I found you. I love you. You're enough for me. I want to be enough for you. And he can't just go with that. That's why they're so broken.
And then I don't think she breaks up with him until she slaps him. The moment she slaps him, it's over. And
Yeah.
if you've ever been in a relationship with a woman, you know that when you cross that one line, there's no going back. There's no going back. And
That's why I
that
never cross lines. Never.
Or swords.
Um,
Or streams.
streams I've crossed. It's 1 year later. We're at Comic-Con.
Oh, yeah.
There's still 27 people there. Ethan Suppley's back.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And this time he's at Banky's table.
Yeah.
Telling him how much he didn't eat Holden.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever
Which is
happened
what
to that
fans
guy?
do. That's what fans do.
Sure. And then in comes Holden, and there's a nice little silent moment between the two of them, and he points over to where Alyssa is, and there she is, and there's another woman with her. Do you think that other woman is her girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, she is dating way below her pay grade. Like that woman is not.
That's a good point.
She
never thought
seems
that.
very uptight.
Yes.
Yes, she
Like
does.
Older.
Alyssa's got a thing for people who are not right for her. She's got a broken picker because she is picking people who are not as vivacious as her. Holden was not as experimental or interesting or experienced, but now she's with an older woman.
Right.
But she's with a woman who doesn't appreciate the culture that she comes from. She's like,
makes
I don't
fun of it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm like, Alyssa, this is not your forever person.
No.
Yeah.
So clearly she has some work to do on herself.
Yeah.
I think so.
Self-esteem issues.
But he's solved all his problems.
Apparently.
He has drawn a Chasing Amy comic that is dedicated to, it says, I'm sorry, Alyssa, wherever you are.
Yeah.
Guy always has a plan.
Well, and also I was like, is it a comic or a graphic novel if it's a one-off?
Yeah. True. Good point.
I don't know.
And there's no color. There's no color.
It's a black and white? I didn't remember that. What's weird to me is like, you just went off.
I mean, black's a color
You
and white.
literally did the ultimate like teenage boy fantasy thing. You know what I'm doing? I love this girl so much. I'm gonna dedicate this whole comic book to her and about how the things I learned about how, and that is how, and then she will love me. Yeah, it's
well, this is a good question, Steve. Do you think he's trying to get her back?
Absolutely.
I do not. I do not. Do you think he's trying to get her back?
I never thought that that's what it was.
Yeah.
But now that you're talking about it, it seems like there is like a secret hope. It's like when you pass somebody your number and you're like, we should get coffee sometime. I haven't seen you in like a year. And you hope they'll call, but they never do. Because the way she puts the book away.
Yeah.
When he walks away, like, all right, that happened. So what are we going to do for lunch? It's just she's over it. It's done. She has moved on. And he is still kind of broken.
When you make a piece of art about a girl, part of you wants that girl back.
Well,
I mean,
I think the comic book is a metaphor for what Kevin Smith is doing. I think he's working this out through the whole movie.
Right. Yeah.
So Holden works what he's working out through the comic book. But I think at the end, he's just saying, I wrote this for you as an apology. I realized you were right about everything. Like, I'm not with Banky anymore. Like, we're not doing the comic book anymore. I'm my own person figuring my life out. you're always going to be a very important part of my life because you changed me. And so this is my comic book because I finally had something personal to say, which is what he says in the comic book, which is what they talked about in the swing. I haven't found something personal to say. He says that when they're walking to the swing at the beginning. So I think this is his way of this is my interpretation. Is his way of wrapping everything up, giving her a goodbye gift, and then walking away. What's interesting is her reaction to the goodbye gift, which I think is fascinating because I think she considers it for a moment. It seems like she considers it for a moment, going back with him because there's been enough time separation. Maybe he has grown, and then the girlfriend kicks in and it's all there, and we don't know if it's ever going to happen because we have a lingering look with Holden, and then the door closes from the room. So I don't know.
I always saw it as very final.
Yeah.
I saw it as he still has hope, which is why Banky makes the maybe you guys will share a moment fingers and puts up like a good luck crossed fingers
which shows that he's grown and changed.
Banky has, but Holden seems to still be carrying a mammoth torch. And I mean, the cover of the comic or graphic novel is Alyssa in a towel, a woman in the bathroom, and the little word bubble is like, oh, Amy, what did you do? And it's still judgy. It's still shamey.
Interesting.
It's still like oddly sexualizing and fetishizing her lesbianism.
Right.
And it doesn't really have anything to do with being like, oh, it's Amy's fault. What did you do? It's like, nah, dog, it's your fault because you were an immature asshole. So,
So maybe you're right. Maybe though she puts away the book as her indicating that she understands he's trying to grow, but he's still not there.
Yeah.
Well, and this is where this is my favorite Kevin Smith movie, by the way. Maybe I should have said that before. Is that this is where I see him use his kind of mastery of immaturity to actually say something kind of mature, because we're not with Holden. You know what I mean? Like we're like going, oh, this guy has made terrible mistakes.
Yeah.
And we're judging him and judging Banky, obviously, for behavior, even though we're enjoying some of that, stuff as we go along through the movie.
Right. And the truth is this film doesn't end with Ben Affleck. It doesn't end with Jason Lee. It ends with Joey Lauren Adams.
Right.
And the girlfriend or the person she's with says, who was that? And she's like,
oh, just some guy I knew.
Yeah.
And this movie, it got a very solid reception for an independent film. It had a little bit of controversy in terms of some of the stuff that we've already talked about in this film. It won for Best Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor at the Independent Spirit Awards for Jason Lee. And, it's also Miramax and Weinstein and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't quite know what...
I don't know. That's the fucking irony of the Weinstein situation, is because so much of what he produced changed cinema and changed our culture for the better, which is why it's so fucked up. The shit he was doing behind closed doors, the shit he was doing to all these people, and how many people enabled him to do this fucked up shit who are still trying now to explain away their enabling behavior through the whole process. And I think that's the shame of this whole thing, because a lot of these movies, they really did expand our approach to these very delicate or sensitive issues or tough issues. And unfortunately, in the long run, and he also made, like, Shakespeare in Love is Miramax, and I fucking love them. Good Will Hunting is Miramax. There's so much, and it's fucking terrible. It's fucking terrible.
Well, and you think about like the Quentin Tarantino movies, and you think about Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, this strong, powerful, admirable character that is created, and then you find out what she was going through.
Yeah.
And it just makes me sick to my stomach.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a million things. I've going back to Polanski, man. Yeah. Polanski, that whole thing. I mean, I love Chinatown, but I don't know that I can watch that movie anytime soon. Yeah. And everything, like, I hated The Pianist. I tried. I did my best to not watch it because I was like, I don't want to support you. Yeah. I don't want to be a part of that. And then there was Carnage, and I was like, I can't get behind this. I had to see it for work. I was required to see it, and I was miserable. And I talked about the fact that I can't support him as a filmmaker because I think that he is a rapist.
And I bet you were vilified for that. And now you'd be celebrated in law applauded.
Maybe.
That's how quickly we've changed.
I don't know, but it's so complicated because Miramax has done great stuff, and the Weinstein Company as a company.
Yeah.
There are so many fantastic films, but you can never excuse what happened. And what is interesting though is how it's now shaping how we're even having this conversation about this movie, which was subversive and pushed boundaries and was produced by a total pile of garbage. But now at least we can have like an open discourse about it.
Yeah. Well, and he was, and just as at one point on some podcast I said that Hitler was an extremely efficient and, a strong leader in all sorts of ways, but one of the most evil men on the planet. Harvey Weinstein was a talented guy. Yeah. You cannot deny the fact that he was able to spot talent where other people didn't. He also apparently was a monster. Or was. I'm talking about him like he's dead. Yeah. He's still a monster. He's a horrible, awful, awful person. And this is this thing, we talked about this when we talked about Crimes and Misdemeanors and Woody Allen, is that how do we separate out the artist and the art? Well, and sometimes it's really hard.
And it's really difficult now to see the reactions too, because with Woody, this has always been a thing for quite some time, and now all of a sudden people are like, oh, I'm ashamed that I worked with him. I want to give my salary to this. And I applaud that sentiment. But a piece of me also feels like that sentiment is occurring because it's now accepted for you to do that. Whereas before, you wouldn't have done that. And like that Winslet interview she gave a year ago, which she is paying for being in Wonder Wheel, was an incredible tap dance of why I wanted to work with Woody Allen and purposely, willfully ignored all the other shit that went around.
Well, and here's the other thing.
Someone like Chalamet I can forgive, but other people.
I can say that Woody Allen's best work happened before I knew what his deal was.
That's a great point.
And then Mighty Aphrodite and Everyone Says I Love You are the only films. Oh, and Midnight in Paris are the only films.
Blue Jasmine.
I didn't love Blue Jasmine.
Oh, I did.
I did not. So those were the three movies where I felt conflicted. But in general, his work kind of sucks. The fact that he can make a movie every year, let it stop. There are people where it's just like you don't need to be making stuff anymore. His Amazon series was unwatchable.
Oh, it was terrible.
Unwatchable.
I didn't look.
But there's a time and a place. Like I feel terrible that I like R. Kelly, but there's only 3 songs I allow myself. Remix to Ignition, Cookie.
Remix to Ignition is good.
And let's say there's pretty much 2. Remix to Ignition and Cookie are like the 2 songs that I will allow myself from R. Kelly. And then I feel like I'm a bad person. Yeah. Like I won't listen to Chris Brown on the radio. I don't want to support Mel Gibson. There are so many people. And yes, there's art and there's artists, but intrinsically, your art comes from who you are. Yeah. It is the most personal expression that you can make. Like Jackson Pollock wasn't making something and we need to separate his art and his artistry. And he was an alcoholic and he was an abuser. Yeah. But there are people who have pushed it way too far, like Harvey Weinstein, and it will tarnish not just their legacy, but also the work they've created. Yeah. And you have to take that into consideration when you look at it.
There's 2 things because I'm so conflicted about all this.
Well, sure.
Because I love Woody Allen films, a whole bunch of them. And it seems like he's fairly despicable in many, many ways. But I can't stop liking the movie that I like. And I have 2 thoughts about it. One is that not everybody should have to pass you are a morally perfect person to make it acceptable to see their art. If that were the case, there would be very little art because a lot of artists are kind of fucked up.
Yes.
Drugs and alcohol and have moments where their behavior is bad. Robert Downey Jr. is an example of someone who had all sorts of behavior that was not
self-inflicted. He wasn't going around jerking off in front of people and like raping women and then saying your career will be over if you ever tell anybody.
Well, exactly, of course. Well, this is this is the other thing. Is that there's a certain point with Polanski or Weinstein where it's like, no, you're done. Yeah. And I totally agree with that. But I also think, like, take Chinatown. Yeah. Did he direct Chinatown? Yes. Is it a great film? Yes. A whole bunch of other people worked on Chinatown who were perfectly fine. And so it's like film is a collaborative art. And so like you don't go like, therefore we shouldn't look at Chasing Amy because Weinstein is a monster. Right. That's not fair either.
It's just interesting that now you can look at it and when the title card comes up, you can be like, ugh.
Exactly.
And to be fair, they had shot the whole film and edited the whole film and produced the whole film before Weinstein ever showed up. Weinstein bought it, maybe made some edits and then put it up. But That's the thing. I think there's the separation, in a lot of things. But yes, he is the reason why it was out, and he is the reason. So you have to mix that on. And I push back at people who are like, "Well, if we ban this, we'll lose their artistry." There's a million motherfuckers right behind the person you're removing who are going to get an opportunity to have a shot at filling that hole. Yeah. There are no vacant holes that we miss in artistry. There's always someone coming right down the pike who can replace that person. And I think we're too precious sometimes about our artists.
Okay.
I agree.
And yes, I have a hard time because I like 2 Chris Brown songs. I really have a hard time. It's my struggle.
Well, and I will say something else.
Forever is a great fucking song.
There's been studies where basically like directors and writers have a magic period, and at a certain point they peak and then they go downhill.
Absolutely.
So you have to sort of realize that there needs to be turnover. Whether it's in, I'm not saying that it's good that it's coming in these like incredibly terrifying ways where you're like, oh my God, this person is a truly horrific human being. True. But the world is large and the talent pool is deep, and other people who aren't manipulative, devious, horrible people should get an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Agreed. So normally I force other people to do final thoughts before me, thus saving myself more time to compose my thoughts. And that's not really fair. So I think I'm going to give my final thoughts first, and then I'll let you guys do it. So there's something that I've talked about in film school sometimes, which is there's an idea of, do we want to, if we want our movies to make a difference and make things better, do we want to model good behavior? In other words, show great people behaving the way we hoped everyone would behave? Or do we want to show conflict and bad behavior in order to learn lessons from it? And I think both of them are perfectly good ways to go. When you watch Captain America, you are showing a model of how we think we should behave, And when we look at Archie Bunker, or you look at Banky, and you look at a lot of Holden's behavior in this film, you're saying, look, here's how people are. People are insecure and angry and conflicted, and they make bad choices, and they're insensitive, and now you look at this and see that in yourself, and then that can help you to change. And I think that both things should exist. I want a world where we can show the greatest possible versions of people, and also a world where we can get into the dirty, filthy stuff about us and talk about it and joke about it and laugh about it and learn from it. And that's what I really like about Chasing Amy, because it does that full on. It goes right into all these issues. It's not afraid of dealing with any of them. It deals them in a really human way. And really, the biggest assholes in this movie are the 2 white guys. So
true.
So I really like that a lot. I think there's a lot to learn from it. There's a lot to laugh in it, and it's a really fun movie. And it is definitely a movie that's really different in 2018, but I think still worth watching. What do you think?
All right. Well, I don't know if I could even come close to touching that. All I can say is this is a film that I had a little bit of trepidation to watch again for this podcast, because I was not sure it would hold up. I was not sure if I hadn't felt the desire to see it in a very long time. But watching it now in 2018, I will say the film still teaches, still has something to say, still, even 21 years later, can speak to a certain time in your life, and also people coming up now at certain times in your life. If you're a 20-year-old, you're a person in your teens listening to our podcast, if you watch maybe you haven't experienced all this stuff, you can watch the movie and have it open your eyes about how to be emotionally mature, how to handle situations, how to approach things, the cost of not being aware of situations, but also what growing up means and what maturing means. You can't mature without making mistakes, without falling on your face, without like pursuing what you think is right and then realizing it isn't. That's maturity. That's wisdom. And so that's what the film shows. By the end, in my opinion, by the end, I feel like Holden has gotten a little bit of wisdom. Banky is certainly wiser. Even Alyssa is a little wiser about the situation to a degree, because she's recovered and healed from it, from what we see. And so I think there's stuff to explore at certain times in your life. This is a film that if it hits you at the right time, if you're young enough, I think it can speak to you, move you, and maybe even expand your mind about how to approach relationships, and not just dating relationships, but friendships as well.
And I look at this movie and what I see is a really iconoclastic, independent filmmaker who has learned from mistakes, those mistakes being primarily Mallrats, and has figured out how to express what people are showing up for when we see Clerks, when we see Mallrats, when we see Chasing Amy, And as a writing exercise, the writing in this movie is not perfect.
No.
But it is so great to watch, to see the way characters can grow, to see how language can be used in ways that are both poetic and incredibly crass and vulgar and frank and abusive. And I think that it's a film that definitely feels dated. Felt much more dated 3 months after I watched it than it had even. I probably hadn't seen it in like 10 years. And the last 3 months have given more perspective than I could have imagined. So it's definitely something that I think you have to take with a very large grain of blunt man salt. But it still, for me, does hold up, and there are lessons to be learned in it. And also, Ben Affleck, we know him now so well, but to watch where he started without going Voyage of the Mimi, PBS where he started, but like this is, you see everything about why people would be like, this guy's going to be a leading man. Yeah. This guy is a superstar in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we think of Chasing Amy. Of course, although I'm a little scared, I do want to hear what you think. And if you want to share it with us, you can visit us on our Facebook page at the Cine-Files, CINE-FILES. Please subscribe to us on all the places you've heard of, the most important being YouTube and iTunes. Leave some comments on YouTube. Leave some reviews on iTunes. Absolutely. We love reading them. If you want to buy the movie, go to our website. We're really proud of it. It's cinephiles.net. You could buy this movie and everything else we've ever reviewed. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at SR Morris. John, where can they reach you? Oh, you guys can always reach me at The Roca Says on Twitter and Instagram. And also, if you want to donate to our Patreon, that's a really big deal. www.patreon.com/the-top10. There's Cine-Files. I'm sorry, the Cine-Files. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I apologize. / When you were talking about saying another woman's name in bed. That's no better way for that coming back and biting me in the ass. Anyway, / the Cine-Files. Please go to that and donate to our Patreon there. And it's been increasing, which we really appreciate. Thank you so much. You know, the cost of the show is so expensive, so we really appreciate you guys donating what you can donate, being patrons, and we enjoy doing stuff for you all. We'll have some more Patreon conversations coming, and also send us some thoughts that you would like to see from us as tiers or levels or prizes or things you want from us for us to do for you as patrons. We are open to it all, and definitely Steve and I are malleable and constantly changing what works and what doesn't work. So we're figuring this out as you figure this out, just like Kevin Smith figured it out as he was doing the movie. So you know, it just occurred to me on Patreon. We've been thinking about when we should release a conversation we already recorded, which is the A to Z conversation. This is the perfect time. I think the A to Z conversation, which is the theory about men and women that we discussed a little while ago, that's going up on Patreon as soon as we release this. That's perfect. Sasha, if people wanted to reach you on the interwebs, how would they do that?
I'm at Sasha Pearl Raver on Twitter and Instagram, and you let me know what you would do if your significant other was in space and you needed to get them back, and the fallout you might expect. Because I feel like we've had some very interesting conversations
I would
today.
definitely like to hear that.
I think that's the next Cloverfield movie.
Sasha, thank you so much.
Sasha, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And I think that's it for this week. We will see you next time on the Cine-Files.